concept of keeping your players healthy at a good pace. You don't have this, you're missing the boat. Like, nothing else has been created that this guy has spent so much time on to bring together for you. It's unreal. And if you meet him, you should talk about all the other content I wrote for this that he did put in the book. Okay, so this is really me. Like I said, chiropractor at Winchester Spine and Sport. I am the co-founder of Gestalt Performance with my business partner, Brett Winchester. He is the chiro for the St. Louis Cardinals. He's also the head of DNS, stands for Dynamic Neuromuscular Stabilization, DNS baseball. So we do some lecturing, we do some consulting, we do a lot of rehab. We see a lot of guys applying for rehab. I particularly specialize more in biomechanics, performance optimization, skill acquisition, stuff like that. Okay, so here's going to be the big meat and potatoes today. I will hit on many other topics, but if I want you to leave with one thing, it's this, what we're going to talk about right here. So this is the creation of inner abdominal pressure. This is breathing using your diaphragm to create this balloon, essentially, from top to bottom, left to right, 360 degrees all the way around. This is core stabilization right here. This is when people say, let's activate the core. What ends up happening is more times than not, you're going to tense up the abs, tense up the obliques. You're going to do something in the deep spinal muscles that causes a restriction rather than an enhancement of movement. So how this works is when we take that big breath in, we are getting 360 degrees of outward expansion. No tension whatsoever. When we bring in a pro athlete, honestly, we bring in any athlete from 11, 12 to guys that work in the big leagues. This is the very first thing we check. If they are not doing this, they are greatly increasing the risk for injury, and they're also decreasing their power output and energy efficiency. So one thing that, if you were here yesterday, Rick Strickland talked about was the pelvis, right? So he was talking about anterior tilt causing some pain, some issues. If you're tilting the pelvis anteriorly, you're causing kind of a compression of the lumbar spine. What also happens is the muscles around there aren't firing appropriately, meaning some are using more, some are using less. You don't have a centration of muscles equally around the joint. That's how problems start. So you can actually use that same principle throughout the entire body. The problem here is when we take that breath in from the diaphragm going down, that pressure doesn't meet on top of each other like it does here. Instead, it's kind of pushing out this way, and you have lack of stability in the spine, which is how we learn to move. So I'm going to go into that a little bit more. By the way, if you watch a baby breathe, every single time they breathe with a big old Buddha belly. It's because they have the best stabilization. You have the best stabilization in your entire life when you're 3 months old. All right, so Carol Levitt, renowned neurologist out of Czech Republic, since deceased, kind of a big name in rehab. He said if breathing is not normalized, no other movement can be. So we take this same principle in rehab and performance. Doesn't matter what we're working on, if we're not breathing correctly, something in the chain of the body is going to be being used inappropriately, which is going to affect their performance and their rehab. So Charles Poliquin, he's a pretty renowned strength coach, he kind of came up with this idea, I believe, that's what the internet showed me, is that it's kind of like shooting a cannon out of a canoe and shooting it off of a concrete pad or a nice firm base. This is what breathing with your belly does. If you don't have good inter-abdominal pressure, your brain doesn't have that concrete pad. You're basically shooting out of a canoe. You are leaking so much energy through the torso. The torso is where pretty much a wide majority of your rotational power comes from. So here is a study. I will point out adolescent male pitchers, take it for what it's worth, not elite athletes. But they did this study to measure the impact of fatigue on pitching mechanics. So there's another little side note. But what they showed was core and leg musculature becomes fatigued before upper extremity shows any sign of fatigue, or kinematic changes, I should say. Basically, clinical relevance comes out to say core strengthening and leg strengthening may be valuable adjuncts to prevent upper extremity injury. So the way that you can take this is, the more that you work on inter-abdominal pressure and breathing and knowing how to create this, you're going to be able to last longer and fatigue less. This becomes very important when you're 4 or 5 months into the season and your body starts breaking down on you. Okay, so Miguel Cabrera, absolute stud. This is kind of when he was tearing the cover off the ball, triple pound base. Amazing inner abdominal pressure, really good stacking of the torso. He will have some lateral bend, but a majority of that impulse that he creates is at a time that diaphragm is stacked over the pelvic floor. Just really good power here into this position there. Another thing I was talking with Rick about earlier was the best hitters accelerate and explode through the ball. They create an impulse of power as they're going through it, not as they're getting to it. It's right at the release. So what's happening is they are able to create the pressure and then create an impulse through the body which transfers that energy up that chain in a very rapid state. So I don't know if any of you are familiar with Bruce Lee and his 1-inch punch and 6-inch punch. So this is very, very efficient energy transfer. If you were to check his bracing of his core and the abdominal pressure he can create, it is legendary, absolutely legendary. That's what a lot of karate works on. They call it the hara. It's essentially right where the lower part of the abdomen and the pelvic floor meet. That's where a lot of their abdominal pressure is created, which is a great way to measure that, or a great way to cue the creation of that. And then, so that's a good way of testing it, or a good way of seeing it, essentially. And this is not. So this guy does not have good abdominal pressure. And I think they kept the video blurry just to hide his appearance, so he didn't embarrass him anymore. Man, feel bad for him. Let's just watch that some more. I mean, live TV. You're starting to miss too. Okay. So before we do a real quick test, I'm going to kind of show you. This is how we assess it. So there's a couple ways. One, by the way, that's Brett there assessing the guy. So that was actually one of our trainers for a little bit, and then he took off. Funny story about him, he trained a little while down in Zephyr Hills, Florida. If you're familiar with that, home of Mike Marshall. So Brett was teaching, he was doing a seminar on throwing at IMG Academy in Bradenton, and Marshall shows up. And we get to chat, and we chat for probably an hour afterwards. And he's sitting there, you know, we're talking movement, talking all what's going on the shoulder. And he's sitting there demonstrating his internal rotation to pronation, all right here. And he's going like that, like right in front of him. And he's like, this is what you got to do. And afterwards, he leaves. And Brett's like, what Mike doesn't realize is he had to come up with that, otherwise he wasn't going to make it. And two, he's in the 99th percentile of people that can create that motion and not screw anything else up in their kinetic chain. I'm like, I totally get it. So anyway, the best way we like to check this is seated, because you got to be able to move, you got to be able to feel it yourself, and this is one way to do it. The other way that you can do it, and this is how you do it neurologically. This is what, when a baby in their 3-month phase of development can actually do it. We can turn it on ourselves by going on our back, legs at 90 degrees and then 90 degrees with the knee. And this is actually 2 separate pictures. One, I'm feeling what my chest is doing, feeling what my belly is doing. It's nice and relaxed, it's flat. And here I got a lot bigger belly. Drink some. But that is the pressure I'm basically able to test that. So if you have a guy that just can't feel it, by the way, this is hard to get unless you have something like this that can kind of help neurologically cue you to do it. This is a good way to do it. So I'm going to do a quick test. Who's my dummy? Joe, are you my guy? We're going to do it again. Go ahead, let's bring a chair over here. And I'm just going to have you sit down. So first things first, I want you to just take some regular breaths. I know it's supposed to move too much. Take some regular breaths. I don't really want you to focus on anything. I just want you to kind of just sit there and breathe. So first we check, we see what's going on in the chest, or in the shoulders, because what's going to happen is he will have some outward expansion in the chest. That's A-okay. That's all right. But we want to see more of this down here expanding. So if I say push your belly into my fingers, I want a lot of that. And that was pretty decent. And then I say over here. So you did a pretty good job on the outside. Now let's push in the back. Nice. So that's actually pretty good. You got a decent interabdominal pressure there. So you wouldn't be someone that I'd have to teach a lot of to. So I'd say the same thing over here, because you're going to actually have differences. Big breath in and out. Big breath in. Very nice. Right there, you can use a little more on the back side of the right. There it is. Okay, so go ahead and stand up. I'm going to put this on you real quick. And it's actually going to be much easier for you to do this. Okay, the right like a belt. But it's going to be kind of belly area. Strap in front. Baby. So this is what we do in the clinic for pretty much everyone we're teaching this. And then if they're in the gym, we have a gym that's connected to our facility. We'll have them wear this while they're, deadlifting, lunging, doing whatever we have them doing. Okay, sit for me. Sit, boo, sit. There we go. Okay, so as you're sitting there, work on your breathing now. Just tell me what you feel as those points are pushing into you. You don't have to think about it. It just happens almost. It just, your body does it. So this is more of a neurologic stimulation to get you to breathe more through the belly. Okay, awesome. You can keep that on if you want to test it out. Oh, there's your chair too. You gotta stand. Okay, there it is. 4360 is what it's called. They make it out of San Diego, not too far from here. Okay, so Eugene wanted me to talk a lot about fascia. So if you think this is icky, just think it's cow thigh. A lot easier to think about. Fascial system. So a couple things about it. It actually preloads to tension. So before you even go to move a muscle, that little fascial layer contracts and it gets ready for that movement. So with that, it obviously has to have a nervous supply. With a nervous supply, you gotta have a blood supply. So theoretically, this is an organ system that we just haven't classified yet. We just did the interstitial system last year. I don't know if any of you saw that. There was the new organ system. It won't be long before we call this the next one. So the cool thing about fascia is it wraps the entire body. Every single muscle, there's only a few organs that don't have this. But every single muscle fiber, there's a variation of this that goes on bone. Like every single part of your body has this. And you can see it's dissected here a little bit. It's like a filmy looking. I like to say it's like when you got beef jerky and you're pulling it apart, you see like little webs in there. Same thing. It's exactly what's going on. Quick test. This guy down the corner, this is a good example of what happens when you have a fascial restriction. So what I want everyone to do is you're going to take your hand and grab your shirt. I just want you to keep it loose, but I want you to have a good pull on it. Tug on that side of the shirt and see how every single part of your shirt is being affected. That's what happens when you have a fascial restriction somewhere. If you have something in the shoulder, you're going to have the same thing up in the cervical spine. So here's another example of why it's so important, because we can see how it actually, this is where they split the fascia, you see the connections from that muscle fiber into that. So if that fascia is restricted, that muscle will be restricted as well. Okay, so big thing that we're noticing is people are looking at a lot more what's called like anatomy trains for the fascial lines. So this is important in a way, but I think it can be overhyped as well. So one thing I want you to think about, and we'll get to this here in a second, is it's by no means the end all be all, but it can be beneficial. So here's a front and a back version of, you see all these different lines? These are all connected in certain ways. Whether it's muscle, fascia, just segments of the body. So if you move your arm a certain way, you're going to have a reciprocal response on the opposite side. The way I look at fascial lines is from a 35,000 foot view. You're seeing the big picture. You're seeing how the body's moving, and that one piece can affect another. What you're not seeing is from the 3.5 foot view, the neuromyofascial slings. What all can go into why there's a restriction, why one piece affects another, why all this can be interrelated. I think this is a very important thing that we need to address. So there's much more to it. Trigger points. So a trigger point is where the muscle binds up because it's being overstretched. The brain says we can't stretch anymore, like we have to stop. So by that, it creates that knot. So what do people do? They stretch it even more because your brain says that feels like it needs stretched. You're just creating more dysfunction. Like that's the big issue with a lot of these mobility stuff is if you don't change the functional issue, it will keep coming back, and I will guarantee you that. Fascial restriction, same kind of thing. Can be from surgery. Surgery can lead to fascial restriction, get a slice through that. Blunt force trauma, repetitive overuse, direction of the fibers of the fascia, that means a lot. So they kind of run like a lattice form, so think of like a waffle fry. We had Chick-fil-A the other day. So kind of the same thing with fascia, they run in different directions. One direction can be affected, but not the other. Like, ponder that for a second and think of how crazy it is that we have to figure out what's going on. Previous knowledge of results, and I kind of, that's used a lot in skill acquisition, but I use it in this reference a little bit more of kind of what I talked about with getting blasted on an inside fastball and thinking about it for months and months and months, and then changing how your motor patterns are because of that. That's another thing that affects that. Emotional detachment and attachment, same type of deal. You know, find someone that knows sports psych, fatigue, previous training practices, like all of this matters. Sight, sounds, and smells, like I can't tell you how much we use sensory deprivation in not only training but our rehab. So many things we use sensory deprivation for. If you're trying to learn new movement, get rid of their sound, get rid of the sense of hearing, put earplugs in them. Have them tell you what they feel before and after. It will change everything. Same thing with sound, or same thing with sights. You give them 50% visual occlusion, so where it's like you see just a little bit, their body has to adjust to that, and it changes everything. So Andy did a really cool thing with the perception of holding that bat. Okay, now have him close his eyes. Totally different, totally different. Have him open his eyes to get a visual picture. Have him close his eyes again, he's gonna be better because he's actually imagining what it looks like. Changes everything. We're working with taste too. There is definitely a neurologic brain coordination or correlation to movement and taste. Haven't figured it out, but I know it's there. So where I see the value in fascial lines, skill acquisition and motor control, is cueing. It's cueing. It's having the coach and the player know the movement that needs to be done, and then finding a way to do that without telling them, keep your wrist here, do this, do that, but knowing where they need to move to create the most power output. I think if you knew what lines are affecting what, you're gonna be a lot better coach. Which is why I do think there is value to that. But the most value is in it's neuromyofascial slings that Andre Gleaming out of might be Denmark. He's kind of made famous for. So this is a really good example of the anterior oblique sling contracting here. We see how the obliques cut across, past the abdomen into the internal oblique, and actually goes into the opposite groin, the adductor muscles. And I'm not sure on this if they blocked this out or if he just has a huge bush. Either way, it's a weird picture. So we see the same thing with the anterior oblique sling here, right? So he's stretching that out, getting ready to contract it all. But remember, what happens before all that even occurs is that fascia's got to get a really good stress reflex to preload that tension to explode and fire that whole anterior oblique sling. And as that opposite shoulder flies over, the throwing shoulder comes up the opposite hip, you're getting a full contraction of that anterior oblique sling. So there we see a good picture of anterior and posterior oblique sling. They both are very, very active with rotational movements. So we see the lat and the glute, and then what they call the white diamond, which is thoracolumbar fascia. Here we have obliques to the hip adductors, like I was saying. That's a little bit more of the anterior oblique sling. And here we have kind of more of the posterior side. So I wanted to put this in here just to show, like, I've seen some people on social media saying, oh, hitting and throwing is so directly correlated. It is, because there's a lot of movements here that overlap. But just know, what he's actually doing here is more rotation, and here is more lateral flexion to forward flexion. And the sling activation, the muscle activation will be different. It's not saying he can't come from the same side and make a swing look similar to a throw like down here, but just know that when you're training something like this, it's going to be different muscle activations. You're using different pieces. Something about. Same thing, we got a runner. We have good activation of anterior oblique slings contracting here. They're shortening, which causes a lengthening of the opposite anterior oblique sling, but flip it, now we have a shortening of the posterior oblique sling, and then a lengthening of the other one. They basically just work back and forth like this. Okay, so I found just a random hitter. I just Googled random hitter. So we're going to call this tennis salmon. Someone got it. So here's fascia that they took out. They stretched it, right? What we're finding with that preload detention is there are muscle spindles directly innervating onto the fascia. We'll call this a muscle spindle. What happens is the brain detects that and it sends a response farther distally. So we have internal stretching, muscles going down all the way into literally the fingertips, can sense this and prepare for this. So that if we have really good activation of this, we get to this much better. Now this is kind of where we see what we call neurologic savants. And I stole this from Brett, actually, my business partner. Let's see if it's the next one. It is. Okay. The best athletes in the world can relax everything and in a split second explode everything throughout their entire body and then get right back to that relaxation point in an instant. These are what we call neurologic savants. These are the pro athletes that get it, right? The outliers. They're born that way, right? Well, there's actually a lot more to it than just born that way. There's a lot of development and stages of development that led them to that position. So I want to just show some video. Here's Barry Bonds, totally relaxed, explode, bang, relax. Good movement of the fascial slings, good abdominal pressure, amazing hitter. Mike Trout, same deal. I mean, same. Boom, absolute stud. Seamless. Same deal, nice and slow. He gets a home run, let's put it that way. Just good sling activation. So I want you to be considerate of fascial lines, but know that the body works more in slings. Especially if you're doing something rotational, which baseball is a lot of rotation. It's in the torso. So DNS, that's dynamic muscle stabilization. That's what my business partner is the head up for baseball. He's worked with over half of Major League Baseball, overseeing their medical staffs. We do a lot of rehab and performance, so we'll have people fly in for like more concierge style, I guess, hands-on type stuff, really getting into the nitty-gritty. And then we'll do a bunch of like local stuff for smaller stuff for high school, college guys locally. So install performance is our business. So what we do, thanks for everything. So contact, you want to reach me, email. There it is. Twitter, I got a couple Twitter accounts. I hardly ever use them, more of a studier than a talker. If you want to get whooped at MLB The Show, there's my PlayStation gamer tag. And then last thing, I took this picture at the Negro League Museum a couple years ago. Satchel's rules for the good life: avoid fried foods because they angers up the blood. Very true. If your stomach disputes you, lay down, pacify with cool thoughts. This guy had it. Keep the juices flowing by jangling around gently as you move. Tell me about it. Feel very light on vices such as carrying on society. The social ramble just ain't restful. Avoid running at all times. This guy got it. This guy got it. And then don't ever look back. Something might be gaining. So there was Satchel's rules for good life. So if you got anything from this whole talk, I want you to get those to live by. Thanks, guys. Any questions? Nothing tonight. Too much? We good? Yeah.
I have a question.
Yeah.
How do you implement or use or assess any kind of fascial movements or injuries or
This is where you have the integrated approach. This is where you have someone that you know to trust. Like, if you are trying to teach someone to get off their backside and their physiology literally cannot do it, you're just trying to chop down a tree with a dull axe. You will not get it done. You got to have a good PT, chiro, ATC, someone that knows this movement, can work through it, whether it's myofascial, neuromuscular, it's something that you need an extra set of skilled hands to get, and then they get back to you. Because there's going to be a lot of instances where you just can't work through it on your own. You need that extra piece. I mean, there's a reason we had so many breakdowns of people back in the day and just thought, oh, I just didn't have it, or I just couldn't stay healthy. Like, there's a lot more to it that we're just now realizing we need. So
trying to figure out how to word the question, but, so I get that how to release it and massage therapy and professionalism. How do you assess it?
There's a lot of pieces to it. I mean, it's very hard to say this is what's going on. There's different people at different perspectives, right? So fascia is it's kind of at the beginning of what we're understanding of it. So there's general lines of thought that if the movement's restricted, you ask the player, the patient, or whatever, what are you feeling? And they'll tell you a certain style of it. So they'll say, oh, I have like a lot of tension here. Okay, that tells me that there is some type of restriction there in that line, right? Or they might go, it's in this direction, or this, or it's deep here. You base off of what they're telling you with their physical movements, right? Anytime you have someone that's had surgery, you can guarantee there's some type of fascial restriction there. So then you get in, you check it, you see what's going on, you figure out why this is happening. As a coach, it's probably not worth your time to dig into stuff like this. He's not moving well here, someone tell me why, and then get him better, and then we'll work on whatever we need on this end. Just because it's deep. I mean, it is dense. So I would say find someone that you trust that can help you out and work, to bridge the gap, essentially. So just look for bad movement, essentially.
From an application side, the reason we started talking about this a lot a while back, and I was looking a lot into it, trying to study it, learn more about it, because I felt like there was something to it. And one of the things that we tested, we took an 11-year-old that we have who was 75, who was gas, and had him set up in a launch and take his hands with a band. I was holding the band down across here, had him get posture, and then turn in. He can take that band, bring it up slowly, stick it, and then eccentrically contract really, really easily. You have a 17-year-old that throws 75 that couldn't even get that same band up, right? So the 17-year-old was bigger, he was stronger, he was older, but he couldn't produce the same movement that the elite did. So when we talk a lot about slack, like you look at the human body as like a tensegrity model. So that's like when you pull on your shirt, it's affecting everything else. Rather than looking at the human body as separated muscle groups, looking at the entire thing as one that's surrounded by that fascial system. Again, there's so much to it that's not even understood yet. We have to keep looking at all the ways to test it. We had a kid, I was 21, his PR was 96. We had him do those band drills for about 3 minutes, and the second swing was 98, and then we had to do it for another couple minutes, and it was 102. So just activating that, and his upper body is a very loose movement, lower body is tighter. So I think that just by pulling that slack out through that activation is what created the environment for that. It was considerably faster.
All right. Thanks, guys.
So one of the things that we did last year that was really successful, I think that everybody really enjoyed, we sat around at the tables and discussed some of the different things that we had questions about, wanted to know more about, for about 15, 20 minutes, wrote some things down, and then there were questions that were posed to the panel. So if everybody could right now, 15, 20 minutes, just talk a little bit about anything that you came here wanting to know, wanting to look into, stuff that you've seen, or just that we should all discuss as a group. Now's a good time to put all those things out, dig in the notes, and then we'll simply do the panel discussion in about 15 minutes.
You're on the panel. Say that again? Mm-hmm. Well, it's definitely not.
Explain everything. Is that important in this discussion?
Probably.
He's in this room. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Did you see what A-Rod talked about?
I didn't actually see I know of the video, but I haven't actually sat down and watched it.
Because A-Rod went from Lions and started off his teachers. And he did. It's one straight. Because it was all about the actual relationship to actually that was my job. It was my job. It started like that. I never spent like it's the actual thing I did before I started speaking. We're having these discussions. I know someone in this room. Isn't that the goal?
Yeah.
Well, we just had a discussion trying to say kind of what he was doing. Because what they see in the film doesn't translate to what he thinks in his head. I told you that's probably about 95% of the behaviors that change the way you think. If they think totally different, it actually produces on the film.
Yeah. I think it's kind of what they're getting at in a way.
I know, but if the guys that make it to the level, that's the way they think to maintain and stay there. Now we're trying to teach them to see the video because they have those slots, those containers, stable containers. When you do that, none of those guys have important things. Most of the guys that do that. Even though the results is what we're trying to teach.
Yeah.
Because basically everything else we teach in our name, it's almost telling the brain to do it. And do it. You understand?
Yeah.
Does that mean
what Freddie Freeman is doing, right?
Great. Oh yeah. And how long did it take James Martinez to figure out? I guarantee James did what he was talking about when he was younger. You had your experience. That's what she said. You had all your experiences to put together. When are you your best hitter? What are the best hitters in the game?
Early 20s, mid-20s.
28 to 32s. 20 to 32 is when you're at your best. Many guys are released right where you get to your best. So it's like, it's one of those things you're trying to figure out. And when people have discussions, they do something, they never go to the guys that actually come in to understand this is what it is. It actually puts people in that position. I mean, I don't know if you
Rick?
I think we've seen almost everybody else be concerned.
Just worked with?
I showed you, Peter Cameron's very hard. We went to Japan and played in Japan just to be, I don't have to worry about velocity. I'm so quick to get up to the basement. And A-Rod was telling that on the video. Because because he thought this because this back shoulder can drop before I go. Even though when you watch the video, that's what you see. You know what I mean? So there's that, but like, It happened in 2006 in the cages in San Diego. Jose Oquendo, right before the playoffs, lost to my brother. My brother. So he's hey, Lewis and my brother on the field with us before we started out. So Jose Oquendo was my brother. And my brother went through the video with Jose Oquendo because they didn't know what they were looking at. And it was right from the cage. I teach you well. Well, it's only a 1 day period. Getting from this, tell me what you see. Watch it, you catch me up, but you watch it in my head every time you say it. Check out Yada's numbers from 2006 playoffs to today. Check prior. He still does the move every time he goes into the rock show. I've never seen him. They're like, he's doing that with the biggest thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah, actually made an impact and got the results that you need.
I'm talking about Hall of Famers.
Yeah.
I'm talking about hold on.
Yeah. It's not little leaguers.
Not little leaguers. Not college all-American. It's college all-American. I'm talking about Hall of Famers. Is that what we're trying to do here? Maybe not.
I don't know. I think
But you do yours.
yeah. I understand.
To sit there and go like, we had a discussion like that. You know what I mean? Like, what were you really discussing? You have no clue what you're really discussing, except trying to back up what you try to teach.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? As opposed to, I tell a guy get the ball at the top of the cage, worst of your work. Tell him the ball straight around, that's it. Tell him to hit the ball straight around, worst of your work. The kid hit the ball straight up in the air, best of your work. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's that feel and that vibe of that stuff. All I know is that this team makes big league hitters. I was never that good. I could just almost any pitcher I can pitch. But I think we kind of lose that when all we do is the cage, as opposed to, okay, as I was saying before, it's like kind of like a so we did our chiropractor, we did the acupuncture, we did all that stuff. And I had to go on my own, because back in the day, Angels, I was like, Boston Red Sox didn't want you to work out. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We did all we got this is what we talked about. Now you're getting more detailed with the biomechanics of the movements and stuff like that, and how the body actually works, which is very important. And then it's just all the fascia and the abs and things. Very important.
So, how do you think it should be the goal of when you're training young hitters? The goal should be to train them in a way for the big leagues.
I think you're training a swing. Is that, you know what I mean? I mean, at a younger age, I think it comes down to basically the ability to put the bat on the barrel of the ball. You know, in most part of the zones. I think that's what we're doing a lot.
that's gonna carry with you.
It's gonna give you a chance to grow to your max.
Yeah.
Because then when the body matures and you understand, then you understand how to do that, produce the result. You know, what's more,
Why do guys have the guys who have constant setbacks? Why? Oh man, this guy's great. And then he gets challenged with a better pitcher and he has a setback. Why?
Contact, isn't there?
He wasn't taught mentally what he needed to know to develop his swing pattern. So when he faced that, he didn't know how to combat it. So then he has to take a step back to learn that process. Then he goes and competes with that guy.
But then
Now
there's
he gets a
something
better
else.
pitcher. Now he has another setback. That's what I've had to learn how to teach over the last 23 years. You can't have setbacks. You got to teach the mindset what it needs to know. The physical skills will come and match as the maturity happens. But there's a mindset component that can't be compromised. Otherwise, you're going to have constant setbacks. Oh, well, he's good in practice, but can't get in the game. And all of a sudden, okay, now he's a little better in the game. But now he's a year older, and so are the pitchers. Now the pitchers have made a jump. Another setback. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So there's a mental component that has to be addressed. It's about, the higher end velocity. Like right now in the minor leagues, I'm in charge of the Minnesota Twins. We're the best at 93 and above mile-an-hour fastballs at the premium launch angle and the maximum exit velocity with the minimal swing and miss. We're the best, and everybody wants our players. They want to know what I teach, and nobody wants to know. I don't need to talk. Just listen.
go look at the data.
That's cool.
But you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm tainted. You want to see what I just wrote down?
Let's see.
I'm tainted because those are all the guys I've coached personally. One-on-one, me and them, I know their mindset, I know what they did. That's only a part of my career. But I'm tainted.
He had also 8 first-time sellers. You didn't get a guy that was already a seller.
Yeah.
First time ever.
It's quite the resume.
That's what I have going on in here.
Yeah.
When I listen to this, there's a lot of good stuff. There's a lot of good stuff, don't get me wrong, but there's components in there that are not being addressed. You know?
That's because they don't have the experience that you do.
Right. So
Yeah.
when I'm working with a hitter, I can pull something that Barry Bonds told me that we worked on. I can pull from Adam Dunn, a totally different hitter. I can pull from Ryan Zimmerman. I can pull from David Eckstein. I can pull from Frank Robinson managing underneath him with Frank Robinson here. Pudge Rodriguez, Bryce Harper, Mike Trout. I can pull from all of them. I have personal relationships. So it's like I'm at an advantage in that piece. But why do players have setbacks? That's what you have to learn. I work with first rounders. The guy, he went from the best catcher in the country, couldn't hit, to the number 2 pick in the country, Joey Bart. I had one lesson with him, one. And he went to the number 2 pick in the country. And right now he's the number 1 rated prospect for hitting and everything. And he's like, you know what he tells me? You know, it's like, you can't have setbacks. You got to talk to the mind. Because they just said it, the mind makes the body.
Yeah.
You got to talk to the mind.
So how do you, like, if you have that one training session with an athlete, what are you doing in there?
I ask questions. What do you think about this? What do you think about that? Tell me how you try to approach it. Show me your swing thought. Show me your swing thought on this pitch. I hold a suspended ball. It tells me everything I need to know. And then I know how he thinks, and then I say, okay, this is wrong, this is right. You need to think this way coupled with this. You need to understand the strike zone versus the hitting area. You need to understand you're a groove swing single plane hitter. And how do you open up the lanes to be able to adjust your swing within your swing? Because what you're seeing now will never be a pitch that you'll ever see up there. You'll never see the pitch that you see now. If you do, that team is either brutally horrible or you're an independent ball. You know what I mean? So So it's like there are things that you have to there's blind trust. There's blind trust to say, nobody knows this about David Ross. His career was over. 2004, his career's over. David Ross came and lived with me for a week in Sanford, Florida. David Ross became what everybody knows as like the best player. Yeah, I had him in college, and then his career, the Dodgers gave up on him, the Padres gave up on him, the Reds were giving up on him. Come here, David, come here. I want you to work on this. Boom, boom, boom. He had the better home run rate than Barry Bonds that year. Home runs per at bat. And then all of a sudden, after 04, his career, then he got 16 more years in the big leagues. Yeah. Whatever it was. Yeah, so it's just, I was the one in charge of Rick Ankiel, going from pitcher to hitter.
Read his book.
Read his book. So it's like, so all the movement patterns are great. It's great. But there's got to be contact in there somewhere. It can't just be movement patterns. There's got to, at a young age, you map your eyes. As a kid, your eyes are being mapped as spatial awareness. You're being mapped as spatial awareness. So I have to reteach how you map your eyes to the ball, because your spatial awareness is off. You know what I mean? So it's like you can't be shorter with your swing because your eyes are telling you to swing, because your spatial awareness is off. And we have to address that. How do we do that? That's coaching. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So there's a lot of components that go into it. I never played pro ball. I got hurt. I never played. He did. I got right into coaching. I started the strength and conditioning program for the Minnesota Twins. My background is biokinetics, kinesiology. You know what I mean? But I'm a hitting coach, so all those other disciplines are a part of my background.
So you don't need the collaborative, it's all
here. But I know how to bring people in. I know when you're a good strength coach, come here. He can't do this and this and this. You get on that, because I'm too busy. I got to go work with these guys. Come here. You come over here. I had him. I was doing acupuncture with him and Barry Bonds in Japan in 2002. We did chiropractic, acupuncture. We did all this physical therapy. All this stuff was happening for us, and it was in its infancy stages as far as baseball. We were doing it back in 02. So this is not new to me. This is now the game is starting to catch up. That's why I'm here.
Share something.
They don't want to hear something.
They don't want to hear it.
I'm interested.
Like a lot of the leaders that you use, they have an idea of they obviously use things up with this they have an idea of getting on a plane and what it means, what their body feels like, or you have to show the elite guys see what
the move you just made. Nobody makes that.
No one makes that
They don't make that move in the big leagues. Their body will get to that position, but it's because of different aspects of how you compartmentalize your body and how you internalize your body working in space. Like we were just doing a hitting lesson with a kid down in Florida, and I took home plate away from him. Home plate's irrelevant. It's ball flight in space compared to your body. Just put the barrel to it. Where the ball goes doesn't matter. It's just impacting the ball. Does that make sense? A lot of time we use those, as he was saying, that we're going to deprive our senses. Yeah, the plate is a sense. We look down and go, oh, it's away. It's got to go to right field. No, it doesn't. That ball goes to left center for a home run.
Yeah.
And if it doesn't go to left center for a home run, you can't be a complete hitter. You can't be complete. You know what I mean? So there's a lot of stuff we could talk about. A lot of stuff. But
mechanical stuff that they're talking about was for guys that really understand how to the guys that you work with that are right? The one thing I saw, because I'm going to my third year coach, I actually went down for part. I couldn't know South Eastern, so.
Okay. Oh no, Greg Brown.
Yeah, I coached for Brown.
Yeah, I talked to one of your pitchers last year.
Oh, really?
The one that transferred to Miami had a lot of trouble. Then Greg, I talked to him last fall. I don't know how the season was this year.
But, well, we had two kids from Miami.
Yeah, they didn't pan out.
But what I found was guys that JD and stuff like the work, they're so in tune with their passion, how far they need to be stretched out. Like when Rick Singer was talking about, our guys don't necessarily need to be all the way at their stretch. but the way we define stretch is different. Like he was talking about stretching when you work phase, and I was thinking about he was talking about like getting good stretch. So I like when I listen to JD talk, like he has such a feel for his swing, and he's like tweaking like really small things. There's one of like swinging, and I'm like obviously I want to work on like the DJ guys or whatever. Like we have to like hey, this is kind of what we want to do, and that's there, which
I mean, there's a lot of dynamics that go into how to teach somebody what to do about, how to process information. You know, if David was going to try, there's two types of hitters in my book, and I'm gonna try and just be very basic. There's two types of hitters. There's table setters and there's run producers. Okay. Where we get into trouble is we teach everybody a swing that tries to be a run producer swing, but yet you don't have the leverage or the power to do that. If he tried to do a run producer swing, he'd be a lawyer because it wouldn't play at the top of the order, it wouldn't play in the middle of the order, and he's not going to play at the bottom because they'll just pay somebody else who's a little bigger, stronger, you know, to play at the bottom. You just get the more physical guy. Okay, the swing and miss. It's like a possible home run. So it's like you have table setter, you have run producer. The problem is we have guys who could be great table setters. We guys are first division table setters. Okay, but we're teaching them run producing swings. Okay, so now they're tweeners. So Ricky Weeks, he was a guy that I had, and I told Ricky this. I said, you won't live up to your career because you do this and then you do that, but you don't do either one very well. You're sitting between. Okay, so you get guys fired, Ricky. Okay, you need to pick a side. Which one do you want to be the best at? He picked the run producer side. A lot of swing and miss, a few home runs, had bat speed, no contact. You know, never really lived up to the second base position that he should have been playing. You know, that all this stuff. And then I had Felipe Lopez. Felipe Lopez was with the Cincinnati Reds, and he was just kind of floundering. Very talented this. Felipe, you need the scissoring move. You need to let your back foot release. You need to do that. All of a sudden, he becomes first-time Silver Slugger. Ken Griffey Jr. comes up to me and goes, I don't know what the fuck you did to him. He's fucking great. True story. You know, and that's Griffey. You know, so and I've thrown to Griffey. I've worked with Griffey. You know, I know all about Griffey. But it's like, you know, it's just like making moves that puts guys in the right position for their profile, so then they can be the productive player that we want them to be. Sometimes we're trying to fit a round peg into a square hole, and it's like, no, that's not right for him. Because at the end of the day, yes, he could hit 10 home runs. He did it in the big leagues in a year. He could hit 10. But if he thought in that pattern, if he thought in that, you follow me? He doesn't hit 10. He hits 230 with 5. You know? Because it's like there's too much. There's a whole different component into categorizing our hitters. There's a whole different. That's my job. You know, we're considered to be. It was Jim Kalis just said the Minnesota Twins now probably rank 5th in the minor leagues as far as their baseball players and production and what they're doing. But you could argue they're number 1. That's what he just said 3 days ago. That's me. That's my department, and I take great pride in that. But it's like you can't pigeonhole yourself as okay, everybody needs to do this. Right? You know, slot this, do this. No. Wait. How does he think? I mean, I had Adam Dunn. Adam Dunn came to me as a 242 career hitter. 40 bombs every year, 242 hitter. Adam, we need to change an angle, we need to tweak an angle. And this is why. When you enter the zone, you won't lose any power, you'll actually gain more control of your barrel. Okay? Exactly what happened 2 years under my watch. He raised his career average 20 points, and now he's a 262 hitter with 40 and 100. Got paid by Chicago White Sox. Got paid for $60 million to go there, and then they had a whole different guidance system, and he was a bust. Well, a complete bust. And he's calling me every day going, they won't let me do this, they won't let me do that. And I'm like, I'm sorry, that's their system. You know what I mean? So it's like, we got to find out the system that works for each guy individually. You know.
I don't think there's a lot of guys that can do that. Understand the swing, and then hey, dude, like work with the guy. Hey, just like let's keep this thing time. You're not going to be a 50 home run guy, but hey, let's get you on swing. Get this on a little bit more. That's right. Get the line dry that way. You can get the 5 balls eventually.
See, that's so like right now in this system, this is 100% fact. We just implemented blast, the blast sensors, okay? And so I told my higher ups, I said, I love the fact that we're using blast. I said, but the way I want to use it is, let me use my eyes. I'll tell you what he needs to work on, and I will affect the correct numbers in blast, and I'll prove it. Okay, so they went into the cage, and I watched the kid hit, and I go, okay, he needs to do this, and he do this, do this. He will not lose this, to go gain peak and speed power, Okay, do this right now. Boom. And they look at the numbers, and they're like, how the fuck do you know that? I've been doing this my whole life. You know, that's what I see when I watch a hitter. I know those relationships. I know those components. So that's exactly what happened. We just had a blast conference call, and they were like, Rick, what'd you do to Jalen Davis in AA? And I said, well, he needed to do this and this to affect this on blast. Is that what blast is saying? And they said, yes, off the charts. I said, yeah, I know. And I don't even look at the blast numbers.
That's coaching.
That's coaching. But you know, that's why I'm not here to talk. I'm here to listen. I want to hear what everybody has to say. You know?
Thanks for sharing with us.
Yeah.
Appreciate
No,
it.
I love it. I mean, no, it's good. It's really good. Don't get me wrong. It's really good. I'm glad it's starting to catch up as far as like, you know, measurable stuff for guys.
Yeah.
Because before it was a bunch of guys just saying, well, just do this. Oh, that didn't work? Okay, now let's do this. At least now you have data that says, hey, you need to work on your exit velocity to a higher level. You're not up to the standard. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So all those components are great, but there's so many more realms of hitting at the professional level, especially the big leagues, that we have not touched. You know, in this meeting we haven't touched.
And a lot of things that we haven't touched on like before 15. There's a lot of things you have to get into before you start talking about this shit. Right. This shit is like, right. But like in the college ball, the guys that get to Nova, they're not ready for this shit.
It's hard. It's hard. It's difficult because there's no ground floor. There's no ground floor.
It's still like, this is going to be close to the ground floor. I feel it's like, it's taking like 2 years. So right.
Yeah.
And I was looking at Brown.
Nobody knows about Mike Trout. My relationship with Mike Trout. Nobody knows all that stuff. Fine, no problem.
Because you worked with the Angels.
I worked out for the only.
All right, so this is going to be kind of a little bit, open, I guess. So if you've got a question directed to one person specifically, then go ahead and just ask them. So if you have a question for Jason, just say, hey, Jason, can you answer this for me? And so what's going to happen, just so we get it on film, is I'm going to come around. If you've got a question, raise your hand. Just introduce yourself. Talk into the mic so our video guy can get it. And then they'll answer the question for you, and then we'll just kind of go around the room. So, who wants to start? Oh, go back here.
It's a little weird sport, man.
My name is Dylan. So this is for the whole group. What factors do you guys see as affecting optimal stride length? And I mean, could you sort of ballpark, you know, how you design a swing, you know, around that stride length, or do you guys have an optimal stride length?
There was a study, Chris Welch of Xenolink talks about the stride length, that it's 4 times the width of your hips.
I've heard that one.
So again, when you talk about the stride length, you maybe have to measure the width of a person's hips to kind of have some range. When I was doing video-based 3D mechanics, you can see the stride length, so we would get those figures back, and then we had something to base upon with the major league guys that were tested prior to it, and so we come out to about 3 to 4 times your stride, your hip width.
I would say a short answer to that is we don't really know. I think when you're looking at stride length, a lot of it has to do with mobility levels of the individual mover. I also think that looking at focusing on how well they're able to hold on to the ground is a good indicator of, you know, that stride length. Like if the stride length is too big and they can't hold on to the floor, they might be a tighter mover, so that stride length is not something that they can, you know, they can work with. One of the things we were looking at the shop, I was talking with Womack about it one day. If you look at guys, and he had guys stand on plates, he tried valve slides. Like if you have a guy go into a squat, right, and he has, Austin, where are you at? What did you have his feet, like shoulder width apart?
Yeah, shoulder width apart, both feet neutral at this point, straight ahead.
So looking at the guy's squat and seeing at what point his feet started to bow out away from him. Like if you look at hitters and you look at pitchers, like there's always going to be, I believe there's some sort of optimal range of depth, right? Like we don't actually hit from getting into full depth in a squat. And we don't actually pitch a lot of time getting into a full depth of the squat. So when you see them start to bow out, I feel like that's an indicator of kind of where they're probably supposed to be, like they're getting past the range that they can kind of handle. But we still have really no idea. We were just messing around with that stuff, and it's just it's interesting to look at things like that, like stride length and how far down a guy should really be, and all those things I think are kind of intertwined.
Yeah, I agree with what these guys said. And some of the things I look at are, like you mentioned, hip mobility and general stability, but also the size of the athlete. Just from observation, I can tell you that when you look at swings, guys that are bigger typically have less of a linear move forward compared to guys that are smaller typically use more. Do they need it? I don't know, but that's just an observation. You look at guys that, especially power hitters that maybe don't have much mass, they tend to have more linear movement towards the pitcher. So that's something we consider. Also looking at the amount of like lateral flexion. Now, if you look at as guys continue to gain ground forward, a lot of times you'll see the spine start to dip towards like rearward essentially. So basically that's something I consider too. Like if I have a guy that has a tendency to really rely on lateral flexion and he has maybe a vertical path from a low ball hitter, I won't have him stride as far because as he's striding he gets more and more tilt over to like almost to a point of too much. And vice versa, if a guy's really flat, I might not have him do the opposite. So those are some of the things I look at when determining strategy.
And I think also real quick, if you look at pitchers specifically, like you watch a Aroldis Chapman, right? And he is a really loose mover. Like there's a video on Instagram of him like taking his hands and he can put them all the way around, connected behind his body. He has a really, I think he strides at like 123% of his height. And that's like the farthest stride length in Major League Baseball. Then you watch guys like Syndergaard, Rudy Severino, and Joe Kelly, and they're really not striding very far, still producing a tremendous amount of force. I'd be willing to bet if you looked at their bodies, they're a lot tighter in their hips and their middle than say Chapman is. So for Chapman to get to an ideal like stretch position, he has to create a farther distance between for his body to essentially like pull that slack out. If you think about it like head to toe, if you're a rubber band or if you have like a loose plastic bag around your body, if you suck all that air out, some guys have a lot of slack between A and B, and some guys are a lot tighter between A and B. So for Chapman, he has to really get stretched with that farther stride length to get to a good optimal position to, launch his throw from. But whereas, a Syndergaard or another guy, it's a lot tighter, tall and fall, drop and drive, right?
I want to add one quick thing. There's a resource out there. I think it's Bob Keys or Biogenetics out of Utah, where they calibrate. I think they still do the area for the crowd. They calibrate the whole field, so they can give you in game something they did in the Major League when they were studying Major League swings. They can actually give you the results of what they did on the stride length. So you can break it back to both $20 something like that. They have all the data.
Also looking at stride length, I mean, especially big leaguers, like Rick said, it's usually 3.5 to 4 times the width of their hips from foot to foot. It's really easy to look at major league guys and see, oh, this is what the norm is at the major league level, but what people often forget is that those are some of the best movers, or like Eugene likes to say too, I totally agree with, some of the best compensators in the world. generally we're not dealing with that population very often. One of the things is at the highest levels, their strides are so long because they're generating force in the back leg that isn't completely vertical. When we see guys that are not elites, generally the knee's going to be stacked directly over the back foot, and that vertical force is going to be going straight up and down. Those are generally the guys too that can't rotate as fast. You look at the golf swing, you know, it's the same correlation. So, you know, the more force they're able to generate horizontally, that's going to be a direct indication of how wide they're going to be, along with, you know, hip alignment and, you know, strength and mobility type stuff as well.
Okay, next question.
Well, I had one thing.
Oh, go ahead.
On the topic of stride, I think it's interesting that, like when I talk about stride with hitters, I'm mostly concerned with how it affects their timing and their pitch selection, stuff like that, because it's interesting when you look at long drivers, for instance, like they don't have a stride, and they're optimizing for velocity, right? So, to me, it tells me that taking a step isn't necessarily for power or force production, but mostly for timing. So, when I'm talking to a hitter about a stride, that's the main thing I'm concerned about, is how effectively can you get on time, how can you adjust pitches and stuff like that. So when designing a stride, that's like really something I'm considering as well.
Totally.
Would you say while holding posture though at the same time? Like if a guy has to stride there at some time but loses posture within that, obviously not the last time. Yeah. But
I kind of have two questions, if that's all right. I'm Ryan Mitchell. My first one I asked at the table, got some really good, like, previous answers, but I kind of wanted to get into the panel as well. I kind of want to know what your guys' take on buy-in and, like, getting culture inside of your facility. I know a lot of coaches are still in the old style of cages where it's a batting cage for a family, like, setting, where, like, dad comes in with two kids that haven't played in the cage next to you, and you're trying to work with your four guys and develop a culture and some buy-in. So just any kind of tips or views that you guys have on that.
Yeah, so I mentioned this last night, and again, something I completely stole from Rick, just the idea of, you know, putting your athletes, you know, in some kind of board, some kind of setting where they're held accountable for how they work. And it's not just your like exit velo or who's the best hitter, because, you know, every facility has that kid who comes in like once a week and just crushes, and the board isn't there to reward that kid. Keeping your athletes honest while putting something, you know, kind of front and center has been really, I've done that at past facilities, it's been awesome. Even just getting things just competition based. We do a lot of, obviously we do a lot of mechanical work and patterning work with guys, but there are some days when we just, you know, we'll turn all the technology off and like, look, you guys gotta get after it today. And, you know, we'll have things like, all right, there's no hit tracks, but you've got three guys behind you. If they all judge you hit this ball harder than the last one, you get to keep hitting. So it's forcing the guy who's hitting, he's got a task to accomplish. The athletes behind him, they have to be engaged, and it gets fun because, you know, one athlete is going to be, you know, super strict about it, and, you know, he's saying every ball is, no, it wasn't hit harder. Well, when he's up, right, he's got three hitters who he's kind of made mad, and he's, you know, he's going to taste it that round. So, just ways to let your athletes feel like not only involved in their own process, but they are, you know, actively influencing them, those around them. Things like that have been really awesome in our setting.
So I'll kind of back Park up and I'll say like a lot of it's player driven, but on the flip side as a coach, you know, the guys are hitting off the hit tracks, hitting off the fly scope, and they go whiplash mode where it's like they, you know, break their neck trying to see what they got. You turn off the hit tracks and you tell guys like, hey, you have to square it up to stay in. Like the first ball they hit, like they have no idea, and like they stare at you like, did I do it? Like, did I do it? And at that point, you take it off. Like if you don't know that you squared it up, like it ain't happening. And then a couple rounds later, like you egg them on, like hey, don't crush the ball. You're like, nah, you didn't get it. When they start talking back, culture started to be created. And at the same time, a lot of the players are interacting too. Like as soon as you fight back at him, all the other players are like, no man, you crushed that. Like immediately that idea starts to pop in. So making a lot of it player driven is huge.
I'd say my answer is I hold the best athletes, and pros especially, to an extremely high standard on how they go about the business, because how they act is really how everyone else below them essentially is going to act. The young guys are looking up to them and they're mirroring how they act, how they go about their business, how they deal with a bad round, stuff like that. So there are a few things that really upset me, but if I have a pro that maybe has a bad round and throws and stuff, or like has bad body language, like I'll really get on them, because that really trickles down. And I think when I coach college ball, it's the same way. If your seniors, your captains, your leaders, you really have to hold them to a standard, because they win much more than us as coaches. They're the ones that are setting the culture. So I will personally sit them down and talk to them like, this is how I would like it to be. This is how I'd like you to take care of it. And pros are typically very professional in how they go about their training. So I think it's starting off. Jason, I'm gonna follow up on that.
So one thing in that same line, the athletes that we were lucky enough to work with, they're not dumb. So as much as I'm 100%, we need to hold like the really talented and the professional athletes up to a higher standard. But as coaches, it's really tempting for us to give those guys like 100% of our coaching when they're in the cage and there's less athletes around. That's in my mind, my own bias. I was not talented as a baseball player, so I saw that in setting, and I was like, no, couldn't stand that. So knowing like setting up from the top that look, when guys who are awesome are in your cage, they're gonna get the same level of like crap talk to them. They're gonna get the same level of feedback. Just showing these like maybe some of the younger, less talented athletes that hey, like what that athlete who is better than me, the training and kind of the protocol he's going through is something that's mirroring mine. Like obviously, he might be better athletically than me, but the training is not any different. The environment's not any different around that guy. It makes it easier for the younger guys, less talented guys to say, okay, maybe there's not as many hurdles I need to jump to be at that level. So again, athletes credit. They're going to see how you interact with other athletes, and having that self-awareness. None of us are perfect at it. Caught myself working, look up and say, oh, I spent the last hour with this kid who hasn't hit a ball under 100. I got to move away from this. But just being aware of that has been something that's kept our environment pretty solid in the cage those days.
Yeah, and it's like especially with like your college or even your high school teams, something you can do is you got your, let's say your 4 like most influential guys, which are usually your best players 99% of the time. Like take them out to breakfast in the morning one time, or like maybe once every couple of weeks, get their feedback session. That way you have a better idea what's going on, and you can share your thoughts with them. Like, hey, like what were guys upset about, what the guys like, here was my thought process behind it. I know back in Kansas City, our summer and fall program that I coached for Bullets, I would have some of our guys, like I would take them, like if we were going to, Kansas State or something like that, I would have them ride with me. That way I could, ask them questions, pick their brain for a couple hours on the road. And, it would give both of us a chance to air some stuff out. They're going to communicate with their players, especially at the college level. If you're a small college, like that's all those guys know is their teammates. So just kind of finding ways outside of practice time to communicate with your guys. And usually, like Jason said, 99% of the time it's your best player.
I'll add something about culture and environment. Most of my business is our club teams with 100 kids. Usually how we set up our training is it's class-based. So there is no 2019 practice or 18 prototype. So you see a class at 8 o'clock, you sign up for it, and you have 14-year-olds and 15-year-olds. And you always have this environment where you have younger kids and older kids actually working together. And that's what we had, so that it's easier for you to pass along what your expectations are. If you have the older kids that have been with you for 4 or 5 years, passing that information on to the younger kids that come up before. Sometimes we have our pro guys or big league guys that come in and they want to hit in the afternoon, and I've got an odd spot open. What I normally will do is schedule a younger guy, one of our top high school players, to hit the same time slot, which is, I think Matt Adams actually flew in Monday, hitting on the tracks, and I guess he didn't understand that there was a high school one. In this high school kid hitting with him, out homer, I think at 13 out of 15 out. I stepped out of the cage and said, damn, that guy's good. And that's high school. So the last thing we do with the press up when I have when we play a game, Jason had square ball. I just pick it arbitrarily. I'll say, well, Matthew, the ball today is 100 miles an hour. You've got to hit it to the outfield grass for it to be hit. And so players put it on the quality of the game. And all of a sudden, you see the environment of the room change. These guys get extremely, it's all laid back, and what are you doing with your swing, blah, blah. I said, the first guy that gets 15 wins. And so basically, if you don't hit a ball that's your average, right, it's an out. And so Matt will hit 197 miles an hour and it's 430 feet, it's out. Well, me, ball's out, not this game. That's an out. These guys get extremely competitive. The one funny story is, Mayor just got called up with the Brewers this year, 5 and 7, and you go through the whole off season, he's hitting 86, 87 mile an hour balls. So we play a game, and I seen they turn this game on. The first ball was 97 miles an hour. And the other kid looked at me and says, well, you've been sandbagging that? And he could not beat him because they were playing those games. So the whole environment when we were training juniors, at the end of the session after we work, we play that game, and kids will come in at the end of it, they'll see it, they'll see these basically guys actually getting after on his record with that whole year.
I'm actually going to flip the script on this one a little bit. So we have a player that's here right now that I would say is a huge culture driver in our shop that's been with us since we opened. So Jonathan, if you wouldn't mind bringing the microphone over to Jonathan Pacheco over there. Let's see what his thoughts are. Sorry about it, on the spot.
I think culture is huge in the facility where we're at. I'm in Riverside, in the Riverside facility, because I'm not going to drive you now and some change to Irvine. But I train with kids that I've gone to school with and kids that are in the same conference that I was in high school with. And I'm in the second year of college now, and I compete against them. We do competitions like that. And if we lose, he makes us sing a song, very like a Barney song or a Teletubby song in front of the whole facility to, I guess, humiliate us. If you don't win or if you don't do what we usually do, the exit velo competition, and then you have to sing a song if you lose. But I mean, sometimes in the weight room you get after it, but sometimes it's fun to relax and just hang out. They throw some jams on and everyone's dancing, and just for a little bit, just the culture, just knowing people, getting to know people. It's fun. It's fun to compete against these people.
What's the best song in the cage to check out? You know this.
Let's figure it out. Come on.
I don't know.
Watch the rains.
Yeah. Take a lap.
And that's a kid who, the reason I say he's a culture driver, since the day we opened, like without fail, 5 nights in a row, every week for like 4 years straight, since he was a freshman in high school, he was at the shop for 2.5 hours. Like, he showed up early, he stayed late, he was in the last group, he got in around 6:45, 6:30, and didn't wait till 9. Sometimes it was 10, 10:30. Him and a couple of guys that he was at the same high school with all used to come in and train him. And, guys like that. When you can get the right players in the environment and the guys that really want to be great, and you surround them with other players that also want to be great. If you look at any team, you have 5 guys that don't care. You got 10 guys that some days they care, some days they don't, and then another 5 guys who they really care a lot. And when you start getting the guys that care a lot, there's other guys on the other team that care a lot, and they all start wanting to come in too. So I think getting the right players that really want to be good and putting them in an environment where they have the freedom to come in. If they want to come in and get after it every day, they have the ability to. So that's huge.
Another thing is you also get to see guys grow and get better as you go. Everybody knows, well, the 3 guys who I always come in with every day. It's the same guy. The same guy I've been coming with since my freshman year of high school. We ride together, we carpool together. I've seen this man grow. I've kind of taken him under my wing, and not to say I know anything, but everyone knows he's a big head case. And that's not really one of my struggles. And I try to help him as much as possible, and I've seen him improve and improve and improve. And it's just, you get to see your buddies improve, because that's more than a baseball friend, he's family too. I consider him my brother, and I help him work hard, and he helps me work hard. We compete with each other in the weight room. We talk about, on the ride home, we talk about what happened today and everything, and we just go at it all the time. And that's the best part, seeing I want your baseball friends with family improve and get better and just doing it all together as one.
Really, like what you said, you know, the biggest thing for culture, I think, is not so much us developing baseball players, but really developing relationships with people that we care about genuinely. And as a result, the baseball will come through. I mean, if you can, you know, think of someone that you work with or someone that you train with as family, it's gonna come through on the baseball field, in the weight room, and in the cage. And that's really organic, and that's the biggest thing. You know, there's a lot of talk about culture, but the real thing is, you know, we really have to care for people and you know, go about it that way as organically as possible.
I'll kind of end this with some more questions. One thing, guy named Anthony Everman, who I coach for at Benedictine, he always said you are who you surround yourself with. Like the 5 closest people around you, that's who you are. And it's very easy to tell when you look at groups of people, because that's how people really work individually, they work in groups. It's easy to tell who's got good culture and bad culture. And it's also fairly easy to know when you're around bad culture. So keep that in mind, that you are who, you know, you are the 5 people that you surround yourself with. That's your closest people. And that can make the world of difference in like a class or just in life in general. You know, everybody has days where like you just don't want to do anything. Like, everybody has those days. No matter how much we can say like we love baseball and this stuff, like there's days where you're like, man, it's hot out, I don't want to go to the field. Like everybody has those days. Like good culture brings those people up. So
I was going to ask a question to Jason, and it talks about, and it's about, you know, the same aspect of culture. And you know, I started following Driveline 4 or 5 years ago, and they get really amped before running guns. You guys have all seen it before. And so I was, and they get really excited, and you see a bunch of, you know, group hugs and things like that afterwards. And then I can't remember who wrote the article, but they also talked about how that is strengthening myelin, which helps with setting new PRs and understanding and remembering where that helped them with the level that they're at. So can you hit on that a little bit?
Yeah, sure. I think anytime you can tie a emotional response to something, it has benefits beyond just maybe the physical, like reaching a PR. Just the amount of work those guys put in, and like being able to see them hit something and then have all the support from all the other guys, you're getting a ton of like dopamine and adrenaline, and you can get addicted to that desire, I guess, and that feeling of getting better. And you have one guy do it, and then it kind of trickles, and the whole culture of the facility is built around trying to accomplish that feeling. So I think that when you see it every day, and you kind of start to compete a little bit too, it's like he's gaining 2 miles an hour, like he's barreling balls better, and like you kind of start this whole competition of like who can get better. We're all on the same team, which is cool because we're all accomplishing the same thing. Everyone's trying to get better, and when you can have the support of people around you.
Next question.
My name's Miguel. I just wanted to ask, how do you guys find a balance between the group sessions and one-on-one, and if you guys have a preference as far as a player developing in those environments, whether it should be one-on-one or in a group setting?
That's a good question. I think it depends. If we have a hitter that has like a lot to work on, or he has like a swing flaw that really needs some attention, I prefer to do one-on-one. Otherwise, if it's just general bat speed training or just, you know, just trying to learn how to hit, I prefer it to be in a group because you can kind of cycle through, you can get feedback from one another, you can take a break. I think a lot of times in hitting, guys just like swing and they get fatigued. For our guys, they take like 8, 10 swings tops, and then they chill for like 2-3 minutes. And yeah, I guess it depends. But if I have a guy that's like really down at square one, I'd like to take him off. We have another cage that's kind of separate where we can really start to like get in there and see if like we can and try new things, and it's gonna be like a lot of failure typically. And last thing you want to do is like humiliate someone in front of everyone. So like when we're trying something new, we like to pull them off to the side, but I'd say like 95% of our training is small.
I would agree with all that. I would say that probably 95% of our training is all in group sessions too. I think that you're able to communicate better with a group of athletes. Different things come up that wouldn't otherwise come up if you didn't have the group there. So I think it breeds a lot of discussion amongst them and amongst the instructor-player relationship. And then I would also say that if you are, like a player needs a lot of movement work, like movement-specific stuff, one-on-one setting does provide the opportunity to dig in a little bit deeper. But really don't do that quite as much.
We basically, when we bring a new person in, the first 3 or 4 hours is one-on-one with them, just so that we can really kind of dig deeper into what we're trying to do, the concept, things of that nature. But after that, after we've gone through the initial assessments, just almost trying to get to know the kid, to get to know how we teach, what we're trying to accomplish, then we turn them over into the class. For a variety of reasons, one of the reasons, especially with dealing with young kids, they can get too dependent upon their hitting coaches for success. So we need to break that cycle early on, that we would, make them totally dependent on us for the success of the player. That baseball, whether it's in the sport, we need to be in a team environment where other guys can help contribute to the development of themselves. Initially, the first thing is to bring them in. We spend a few sessions with them one-on-one before we pass them off.
I agree with Rick. Like the first 2-3 hours, like that's some stuff where you got to hammer out. Getting to know the athlete getting to know you, getting a deeper understanding for what each person's trying to do. I think it's no different than like being recruited in a way. When you're recruited, it's usually a one-on-one visit. When you have exit meetings, it's one-on-one. When things need to be personal, it's one-on-one. And every other time, like it's a team concept, like it's a team game. So let's work as a group. And I think a lot of times in instruction, like within a facility, it's not like you generally have kids from like 1,000 teams going there. You have usually 2 or 3 kids at a time from a certain team. Like I could have 3 Bullets guys training with me and 3 Pirates kids training with me. Having all those guys together only strengthens kind of the culture on both ends. So you're killing multiple birds with one stone, essentially. So I would say, if it's really something personal, and kind of like Jason said, we got to really do some magic. That's one-on-one time. Other than that, it's a team game. Most of those guys know and play with each other. Keep them together.
Is there a max on the group, the number of kids in that group before the quality starts to, and what would that number be?
I usually try to keep it to about 4 to 1. Usually we can go 3 to 1 instead of 4 to 1 in a setting like that, because usually hour you can delegate enough time to each one of those guys to kind of do what you want to do.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's how we set up our place, was 4 to 1. I think it depends on what you're doing though. Sometimes you can add in a couple other guys if you're doing different things. Like we'll do some stuff, Mark had started working on some, including decision-making, heart rate, and then swing. You need more guys in the group to cycle them through that. So having guys doing the decision-making drill, whether it's 2-ball and balance board, and then they'll go to the next station where they're doing, getting the heart rate up, so it's forcing them to control, letting their, bringing the heart down, bringing the breath down before they get up to the plate, and then going directly into swinging and then to toss and cycling through. So I think it just depends on, the number depends on what you're doing with the guys, but 4 is how we set it.
I'm not even. So this is kind of a mechanical thing, I guess you could say. I have a good athlete. He didn't start playing baseball. He was a sophomore in high school. He's got a good swing, but he struggles reading and decision-making of curveballs. Like, he has no idea of how to read or, like, understand a curveball from the hand. And he struggles with, like, higher velo. Just kind of some tips and some things. I've tried a whole bunch of different things, and I'm kind of lost in the dark. This one's ended up with that.
Machines are cool. For athletes like that, one of the things, especially the guy without a baseball background, a lot of times, just from what we've seen, is they spend a lot of time, like, as the ball comes out, they're trying to read a ton of info at once. So what we've done with a lot of our athletes is, whether it's like a scooting motion machine or putting like an actual, like a piece of a landmark on the ground, like, look, all I want you to do is make a decision early in ball flight. I don't care if it's right or wrong, but stick with the decision. A lot of baseball players, they give the bats away not because they necessarily make the wrong decision at bat, they don't make any decision. They get caught in between, they get caught in this indecisive, kind of defensive mode, even for no reason other than they put themselves there. So, more so than correct identification initially, we were just going to look, get used to making a decision and acting upon it. Getting caught in between, that's how you, in line, that's how you put yourself in slumps. Like, understand if it's 0-0 and you see fastball in the hand, take a hack at it, and it's slider, you swing miss, that keeps going. Alright, you get caught in between, and it's like, oh, grab the slider and try and do that like first base hug kind of weird swing, and it's a like 3-hopper second baseman, make contact with your bat's done. So just the idea of learning to make decisions early and some amount of decisiveness that'd be step one for me.
I think another thing too is like the psychological aspect along with that. 50-year-old, said 15, right?
He just turned 16.
He just turned 16, doesn't have a baseball background. Guys are probably been playing for a while, and they've seen fastballs, curveballs, sliders, all that stuff. Like, he's probably gonna already feel a little bit down because he's behind and he doesn't have the experience that the other guys do. So trying to maintain that psychological aspect is going to be useful.
One thing that I think could potentially help in kind of keeping it as simple as possible is kind of just defining an approach. All too often, you'll get a guy in the facility and he'll be, well, I'm late on the fastball and I'm early on the breaking ball. And, sure enough, he's caught in the middle of two speeds. If you can just set a little bit of a foundational type approach based on the count, what the guy's throwing and what he can put on strikes and what he can't, that can go a long way in being able to prepare for a certain speed and being late on the fastball and not being able to handle the breaking ball.
Yeah, I think that's one thing about hitting that's so tough and makes it so hard to coach is that it's really difficult to mimic game conditions, whereas other skills like basketball you can go play, right? Most practice is just playing games, scrimmaging or whatever. Tennis or anything really you can play against each other. Where hitting, it's like you have the limited resource of arms, so you have to get creative in how you prepare guys. And if you don't have a machine, it can be especially hard because when you have to cover multiple pitches, it's just a different animal, right? Especially when he doesn't have any prior data points, right? He doesn't have all that like throwing up and seeing all his pitches. He's already behind neurologically. So for him, like what I would do is just throw him a ton of breaking balls and mixed pitches in BP, like all as much as you could, and get a machine, have him see a bunch, and like start from ground zero. Like, have him take pitches, have him drop once down. Even I know I guess you were saying that, but it works. Basically, getting used to seeing the ball and like seeing, okay, spin coming out of this arm slot or this tunnel means the ball's going to be here at this space and this time. Because like he just doesn't have that solution, right? Like when his brain sees that, he just doesn't know what to do because he just doesn't have a clue. So for a guy like that, you need to do stuff that you maybe would usually do with a 6-year-old or an 8-year-old who's never seen it. Right? So I guess that's my advice. Nothing too profound, but just throw as many. Yeah. I mean, I actually like messed my elbow up through my break balls. I was coaching. So just one final one. So one of the better resources for this, being as a particular researcher, we mentioned Quiet Eye here a couple times. The researcher, Dr. Jones Vickers, she had this textbook called Quiet Eye and Decision Training. One of the first books I picked up, I was like, oh crap, I'm kind of doing a lot of this wrong. Let's fix that. But it talks
talks a lot about this. It's very little, bioenhancement movement, but how we go about making decisions in an athletic sense. That book and our subsequent research has been awesome for me. So Amazon for the textbook, and then Side Hub for all of our new stuff.
Just thinking about that, sometimes, when I stop the game, when I'm watching players play, somebody may have a good breaking pitch or something like that, and sometimes hitters kind of get lost in the fact that they're going to struggle with this pitch, so it becomes stressful for them at that point in time. You think about hitting the breaking ball machine, you're not very good at it, and all of a sudden there's some anxiety that builds up into it, so the reaction time and all those pitches kind of slow down, and you start doing different things biomechanically. So one of the things we try to do is to find some other type of external cue to give them and not focus on the machine, the breaking pitch. I remember this, I didn't think about it when you first asked questions, but Carlo and I we were working off the machine, and they were ready to get off the machine. Carl said, I'm not getting off the machine. I can never get off the machine. This is bad. And I said, well, you've been working on this timing drill. Why don't you go up into the machine and think about working on the timing drill? And he went up there and he started working on the timing machine, wheel, and hit his knob in the first we hit. All of a sudden, it's like hitting the machine. He steps out of the game, he gets stripped. I said, that's like hitting the machine all day. Now the machine is swinging. Just gave him something different to think about, something else to think about, something else to focus on instead of, I've got to hit this particular pitch when I'm straight. Just took his mind totally away from what his failure is going to be and just put him back on and put him someplace else to focus.
Yeah, it's got a kid that got into baseball late in
One of the ways that we like doing that, if you set up a tee low and away, and you put it out front, a lot of hitters, especially young hitters, rather than, again, going back to something I said earlier, rather than allowing for thought to influence the motor pattern, they force the result. So when you tell, players to stay back on that pitch, but then when you watch elite hitters on off-speed pitches that are on the outside part of the plate especially, they're going to get it. They are not staying back. They are hitting it farther out in front than a ball on the inside part of the plate. That's just a thought, right? And when you think they're out in front, a lot of times they're just stuck on the back side, and if you would have allowed them to go out to get it, they would have hit it, a lot better. So if you take a low tee and you put it out in front of the plate, and you do a BP or toss on the inside part of the plate, and then you fake the throw, and on the fakes they have to hit the ball off the tee. It keeps them honest to both sides, and they have to learn how to find a way to go get that ball out front. A lot of times early on, if you have them do it with a regular, just a regular grip, regular length bat, they'll end cap stuff early on. If you choke up on the bat, like halfway, like all the way up, halfway up, they'll find barrel. It's the most ridiculous thing ever. They'll find barrel because their brain knows that the implement is so much shorter, it forces them to create posture and do the things they need to do to go find barrel. And then after that, letting them know to take the same swing but from the regular grip, you'll see them start to, find ways to go get the ball. So that's one we really want.
There's a good book called The Sport Gene, and in the first chapter, it actually tells a story about, I think it was Jenny Finch, punching out Barry Bonds and King Griffey Jr. and all these big leaguers that on 3 pitches, when the reaction time is no different. The only thing that's different is they just never seen it, right? Their brain, they can physically do it fine, but it's something in the brain. It's no different than your buddy who's just never seen breaking balls. So, yeah.
What book was that?
The Sport Gene.
My question is for Ryan Parker. So I noticed a couple times in the game room you had some video clips of football players juking people. Could you explain what you were trying to teach guys by those clips and how you communicated what you were trying to teach?
Mainly it's like flimsy excuse to show Anthony Thomas highlights. What we did with that was some of the ideas that we think are fairly easier, kind of mundane to us, to hitters is sort of speaking another language. The idea of getting into the ground, like feeling the ground in front of you, to utilize is don't spend all the time in the cage. The other thing. You know, to us that seems normal, right? But hitters like, wait, what? So we cropped up some clips of D'Anthony when he was at Oregon and June got out of their shoes. You can literally see when he puts force in the ground, you can see like his center of body stay pretty still, and then like rubber pelts getting kicked up behind him. So they, you know, it's just like, oh, that's what it looks like. You have other plays where he's just kind of running and getting knocked around by guys, and like that's when he loses the ground, and the force of the play just knocks him around. It's the idea of redirecting force versus force redirecting you. Trying to take it outside baseball because these guys watch swing clips all day, so trying to get a little weird with it and watch D'Anthony Thomas, new guys, and awarding is good at football sometimes. So.
So this is kind of for Dawes and so kind of and also so just specifically, you guys, just because also too, I know that league football schools spend a lot of time with private teams too. When it comes to like not only individualizing things, but also on top of that, you know, we kind of talked about you're trying to just get something that simulates game, right? But then if you take it like outside of the sport, let's say like a Navy SEAL or something like that, a Navy SEAL is going to do things that are harder than what he's going to actually experience. It's not the same. He's trying to be so that the game is the easy point. Like the practice should be 10 times as hard as, you know, whatever they're going to face when they actually get out there, right? Because it's life or death for them, right? So when you think about that, like we keep trying to find ways to get to just game speed. What do you guys see like in the future of things like in a practice setting, things like that, where we're not only meeting game specifications, but pushing it to a limit of, like, I love that Strick always talks about is striking an object, because getting back to what the actual skill is striking an object, not baseball, like breaking it down to its minimals of that. How do we increase it where it's so hard, obviously progressing to that point, but what do you guys foresee that being, and how does that look in a practice setting?
That's a good question. You know, I think one thing that gets overlooked within like a college practice setting is the other stresses that go on at school and like the weight room, study hall. You have to eat the calf all the time, which everybody's been through that. Like that. There's a lot going on outside of baseball that I think creates some different planning that you probably have to have. In terms of creating more challenges on the field, I think one thing that's been overlooked is the aspect of recovery and how we're challenging the CNS. You know, we can try to make things game-like, and maybe the next day we can take it back on a little bit after they got crushed in the weight room or something like that, or a spinal squeak or something. And then in terms of really challenging them, you can go high velo, go angle toss, or angle machine. I think the more information that gets out there, the more technology that gets out there, the more affordable technology becomes. I think that's the direction things are heading. I don't foresee the days of, you know, just chucking BP before a game being around a whole lot longer. I know Jason's put a bunch of stuff out there on that. I don't foresee, you know, just crushing baseballs off the tee 1,000 times being a thing much longer. Front toss, like I feel like the more information, the easier it becomes accessible, and the cheaper technology becomes, the wider scale you're going to see things. Instead of just seeing them from Division I teams, you're going to start seeing them from junior college and AI teams. And I just think the more accessible things become, the more change is going to happen, more adaptation is going to happen to practice playing, and you know I think that's where the exponential growth happens.
Yeah, I think when it comes to overspeed training, there's certainly a point of diminishing returns. That depends on just the caliber of the athlete. So for a lot of our like really good hitters, they can hit the ball at 95, 100, and they kind of like move up and maybe crank the speed up, or put the spin rate at like 3,000 RPMs, or put a breaking ball that's just ridiculous and be fine and not completely make negative adaptations. Whereas a less skilled hitter, when you put them in that environment, it's just going to be disgusting, and they're going to actually get worse. So that's where like the art of coaching comes in. And I know a lot of like really good hitters. I mean, I've read that Barry Bonds did that, and Pedro Martinez had a tennis ball machine throwing 100+ miles an hour. So yeah, it's certainly a good idea, and we do it for sure. But a lot of our hitters aren't good enough. Like they can't even succeed in practice at game speed, right? Like we'll set the machine up at just like an average major league fastball, spin rate, spin direction, just general pitch characteristics, and they're failing too much to even take to the next step, which a lot of guys can do, but it really depends on the athlete. And I think you can apply that to defense a lot too. I think defensive training that's harder than game speed, I think is really valuable. And yeah, it's definitely a topic and something that we do. Like we'll go extremes on release points. Like we go over release points every day, and we go from like Scherzer to Chris Sale. It's like we're marked on the ground. But sometimes we even go outside of it a little bit. And take like sliders from far right and go a little extreme. But there is a point where it just gets ridiculous.
When you guys, I know Max was posting this a lot the other day. When you guys did the curveball machine from like, I don't know, however crazy height you guys set that one day with a crazy spin on it. What did you see from that? Did you see negative returns on some guys, or did you see?
Most guys, yeah. Because it was coming in at like 26, 28 degrees, which is like more than anyone can do a blender. And yeah, guys it was just disgusting. You're hitting balls off their foot and then trying to like get really super uphill. So yeah, we're not doing that anymore.
I would also say, I agree with everything that's been said 100%, but I also think we need to take into account what Andy had mentioned earlier, just about finding balance, because I do think there's value to, feel good rounds prior to the game, to locking in kind of your best swing before a game, because if you look at numbers, and this is one thing I try to get players to understand all the time, what is success? We call it 3 out of 10. We always say stuff like 3 out of 10, right? But if you have a big leaguer that goes 30-30 every year, you're probably going to be pretty happy with, with his results, okay? What has he seen? 4 pitches per plate appearance, 500 at-bats, 2,000 pitches, 2 swings per at-bat, some at-bats 1 or none, some at-bats 4 or 5. So he did his job, 60 out of 1,000 swings. Hit a double and a home run, 60 out of 1,000. And then we really look at the numbers, and we look at the pitches they're hitting. I don't think everybody has, a fully complete heat map where they're hitting every pitch in every zone really well. And I think if you look at that strike zone, or it's the smallest strike zone in all of baseball. Like if you look at college guys, I think strike zone is bigger even than you look at, the big league level. So they have a smaller area and they're the best hitters. So I think that there's a balance that needs to be found. I mean, setting up slider machine, if you're facing Scherzer tonight, absolutely. But on the same token, different hitters are going to succeed more, I think, with different things. Some guys are going to do better trying to maybe lock things in. Other guys are going to do better maybe being challenged more, and the degrees and the amounts we have no idea because nobody's ever really done it. But it's something that needs to be done, and the game needs to be pushed forward in that way 100%. Especially for guys, I think, that need to put up better numbers and stop thinking about what they're doing. And if they just started focusing on hitting that slider, maybe their best swings would be more likely to come out. I'd be curious to hear, David, do you have any thoughts on this? I'd be really curious to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, and everything you guys are talking about in the sense of, I think we talked a little bit, the overspeed training, that is so important. How do you make it game speed? And someone touched on it a little bit before, is the heart rate. How do you control your heart rate when you're in the box to be able to decompartmentalize your body so everything acts like you are at a resting heart rate? And I think that's one of the things that talking about in practice. How do you make that happen? I mean, I played for a college coach it was high intensity in practice. He wanted the practice to be harder than the game, so that when you stepped into the plate, you knew what 140 beats per minute felt like, and you were just as calm as possible to be able to perform your swing that you want to perform to. And you're talking about the fine balance. Like you said, I personally did not have the opportunity for like you said, the 105 speed training stuff. But I did have a brother that when he was 7, I was 5, he would throw it as hard as he could at me. All right, and then as we got older, he had a breaking ball too. All right, and he wouldn't tell me what he was throwing, and I had to catch him. You know what I mean? So I'm trying to catch baseballs, you know, being younger and training my neurological path, like my tracking of this, of just by sure of doing that. And I think that was probably one of the reasons why that I was able to make it, was because at such a young age, I was already tracking balls and seeing. I feel sorry for, you know, your son that hasn't seen that stuff, because it is hard to make that catch up, that when you lose that time. And I was just very fortunate to have an older brother who could throw the ball very hard. And so you try to incorporate that at a younger age. How do you put that into a setting that actually develops a player? I think you said it best. We have no idea. To be able to do it and then do it over a 162 game period, to allow that player to get enough rest and recovery but still perform at optimal levels. Those are the stuff that, for me as a player, I did like seeing the breaking ball machine. I like tracking. I gave Andy a little bit of a hard time ago, because my one take, because I don't know if people knew, I took basically till I got a strike, basically probably about 90% of the time in the big leagues. But that was all a data processing for me to understand release point, to understand where he's coming. My depth perception was pretty good, and I could give that. I thought I was a different type of hitter than anybody else. I thought I saw the most fastballs probably in the big leagues than anybody else. So I had that leniency to give him a pitch. But I was recording data on my high focus, even though I knew I was taking, so I knew I'd be better on the next pitch. So it's all that kind of stuff that we are trying to talk about and perfect in a practice. And I talked to Jason, like the sense of, he's been doing some mapping. He's starting on that. And I told him, like, my brother and I said, we want to go up there and see that. Because if we can train what the guy actually sees, then we have a better understanding of how to train him to be able to acknowledge the sense of the spin rate and what that equates to what I map to when I start my swing. You know what I mean? So that's the stuff that, how do we do that in a practice? I think whoever figures that out, holy smokes. I mean, they're going to be on something that's very good, you know.
It might even have more to do with, you know, managing not necessarily even before the individual pitcher you're facing, but maybe managing the workload between when you're doing those things and when you're not, like doing a lower effort patterning day, and then doing a higher effort breaking ball day, and then doing lower effort patterning day, and then like a more fastball over speed day, and just trying to find a way to manage and navigate all those things to see what's creating the best results.
Something like I played with, and like we talked about like offset, and I was talking to Max that one day, and I was like, well, how far have you ever offset? Like, and he's like, well, you know, when we do front toss, you know, we go line to line on the field. And I'm like, well, have you ever done like a machine from, you know, which is extreme. Again, would be way harder than anything you've ever had. You know, again, farther than Chris Dale or Scherzer or whatever. But again, if you know, you could hit that from that angle, and then he kind of gave the argument back, hey, what's the ultimate goal? Like, the ultimate goal is that we have to stay in a range, you know, in a box of somewhat of like, we're trying to produce a result for this type of setting of baseball, obviously. So like, I played with, you know, we have machines as well, the same machine, but putting it, I think I added you that one day in Eugene too, is like, you know, machine's only this high off the ground, but it's shooting rockets and it's flat and it's a different, you know, different angle, and it's a constraint where guys now have to take a certain approach to that ball to hit or whatever. So like, I think there's like little things that we kind of dove into, like things that we tried, but at the same time too, like, I haven't done it long enough or with enough hitters to know if that helps or like, you know, I have no idea.
So we kind of just, my name's Brian, we kind of just dove into like how you guys work into development, but like let's say you're at a point where, you know, the kid's right in the cage, his movement patterns are better, you're watching him make progressions from, you know, being being better in front toss, then being better in VP, and then seeing that not translate in a lot of bats, like some of your guys as individual approaches to, you know, all right, you just went 0 for on live ABs yesterday, like what's your next plan for the next day?
Hey, buddy. You guys don't know, Brian hates being called buddy. So, like, you're a really good example of that. On Saturdays this summer, we took our guys out to the field and we would try to get them live ABs. We would take them to University High School, where Coach Thompson's at. And Brian would have weeks where he was a total rock star in the cage. I mean, just living 94 to 97, just hitting seeds all over the yard. Angle stuff, arrows getting in the middle, it's just money, you know. And he would get out on the field, and it would be a train wreck. But you could see like the wires like going off his head every time like he would step in the box. Like he looked at the turtle on the field and was like, "Oh God!" Like you could see it happening. So for you, Brian, like a big part of that is I remember after 1 week, I think we spent like an hour and a half talking to each other, just like literally talking about what we were thinking. And like a week later, you go and hit a jack off of a Division I pitcher, right? Like a lot of that was just you trying to get out of your own head by talking and trying to, instead of internalizing a lot of what you were doing, you were externalizing it and getting feedback and letting people know how you feel. The rush of anxiety most of the time is what gets those hitters really going. Being able to control that, we spent that time breathing. We did the high heart rate stuff, focused on our breathing, learning how to control the heart rate. Most of the time, that's where the issue is. Like with guys being just rock stars in a cage and then doing game and it's a train wreck. A lot of it is frustrating. After that first at bat, it's pure frustration at that point. Now the anxiety is even higher because you don't want to fail, and that's a big part of the reason why we try to talk to you so much.
Some of that can be, in a cage setting, you can go fairly internal and still crush stuff because it's a cage and the challenge isn't that difficult. So one, it's on us as coaches to make sure the challenge is there. The other thing is just making sure like keeping it external enough so what you work on in a cage can transfer to a field. I remember the very first professional client I worked with, I was getting fired after the first time we got on the field. We did all this cage work, it was looking great. We went out to the field and it was like 3 hoppers, shortstop. I'm over there being like a cheerleader, like, oh, you got it, dude. You want to back my head, I'm like, oh, crap. Luckily, I was able to talk to this guy's college coach. I was like, what? Like, this guy crushed in college and struggled professionally. He said, oh, and he always talking about how he was trying to hit through the batter's eye. I've never heard him say that. So got like on the field next time and just kind of casually mentioned that. And, it wasn't, he wasn't hitting satellites kind of day, but it was far better. So finding out what, because obviously you've had success on the field. And what have you felt? What is your thought process there? Sometimes there's a separation between our cage and field work. Like, can you bring back what you were awesome with during a game situation and put that in the cage? So it kind of just becomes a cycle that feeds itself. Just finding things, not getting lost in the success in the cage, always being able to transfer back to the field, even in your thoughts and feels.
So you and I sat one night until like midnight talking, right? And you communicated some things, and we ended up talking about it pretty in depth, just in your own personal feelings towards the game and towards how annoying it was for you and how angry it made you that there are players that don't work nearly as hard and they go out and they find success and you feel like you work harder than everybody and anybody, and sometimes you struggle. Being process oriented rather than results oriented is a huge part of that, and you not allowing whatever those failures are to determine where your career is going to go and what's going on in your head. When you look at all the at-bats that guys get, and you look at all the swings, you get 1,000 swings. You go 0 for 20. What is that, 0 for 40 swings? You got 40, you still got how many more? Right? You still got a lot more swings left in the season. The guys press too much. a guy like you who wants so badly to find success and has such a great mind for you. When you came in for your evaluation, like you brought in a book that had notes in it from the last like 5 years of you hitting, like notes on Tukes' stuff, notes on not gonna say his name stuff, notes on tons of different guys, right? Tons of different guys and stuff you've worked on, and stuff you've done. You want so badly to be great, and that's what's going to make you great, but you also have to learn how to relax and let things happen, especially when the game happens. You know, ups and downs are always going to be fun. You know, just like Mike said earlier, the game has a very funny way of humbling you all the time. You have to kind of live through that and just be okay with whatever. All you can do is everything that you can do. All you can do is what you do. You work so hard, there's nothing else that you can do. You put together plans, you work hard, you do the things you're into. So, you gotta release it.
I can directly relate to that story. You know, I was always a guy that worked extremely hard, wanted to know why I was doing something. You know, a lot like what Eugene said, I had notes and notes and notes of 30 different hitting guys to where it was, you know, it was almost paralyzing. And for us, the guys that work so hard, I think part of the difficult thing is actually letting go when we get on the field. Like, you know, I tell my guys, you know, hey, I went 0 for 4 this weekend, it was terrible, and I'm like, man, that really doesn't make sense. I'm like, what were you thinking about? And they go, oh, what we were doing in the cage, it works in the cage, I might as well do it in the game. But it's like, we don't have to process as much in the cage as we do in the game, you know? And the reaction times, like we talked about, making practice more like the game isn't quite there. So, you know, putting in all that work that I know you've done, I mean, being with Eugene and, you know, Mark and Dawes, it's there. I know you work extremely hard, and now it's just, once we get on the field, like, turn the circuits off and let your work come through because you've done the work. You know, oftentimes it was I'd work so hard in the cage and I'd get in the game and be like, man, I can't wait to work on this too. And it's like, wait, what the hell just happened? This is a game. This isn't practice, you know? Exactly, enjoy it because you have worked your absolute tail off and just, you know, let it come through.
How old are you?
23.
So usually, you know, really, especially at the older level, when you're 12 years old, the stress level of playing a game of baseball, definitely I can probably ask you really the level that they are right now at 23. They're not.
Non-existent.
So when we're 12 and 13 years old, it's just a game, right? We go up, we get frustrated, winning and losing, and we just play every day. That's what we did. Along the way, all of a sudden, you had to play to get a college scholarship. You know, maybe mom and dad were sitting there and they were playing, you had stresses on you to play. So all these external factors start to play in and start to get part of your development as a player. The people who are really good at compartmentalizing all that stuff like that can take that information and put it aside. So the older we get, especially in pro ball, we never know it's draft time. All of a sudden, draft ready players. I'm going to get the next day. You know, I'm release. So I've got 4 hits tonight. I'm just going to think differently about me. Those are things we didn't think about when we were growing up. We just absolutely we just played. We had fun. We went out. We took notes about what our success in the Phillies were. The next day we go. A lot of times when I'm in the cage with one of the pro guys, they'll have days, 4 or 5 days, they do really well. All of a sudden, 5th day, it just everything goes off to shit. They don't swing it well. They're looking for answers. You know what I do? I don't say a word. Not a word. They come back the next day, bam, they're back on it. Did you see anything wrong with my swing? No. You might have woke up on a different side of the bed that day. You know, slept wrong on the pillow, whatever it's like that. If I see a pattern that this is happening on and off every day, then maybe there's something there. And if it's just a one-time event, take notes of it, move on to the next day. You don't have time to stress over things that happen.
Yeah, I'm willing to bet that everyone here is coaching a guy that's just like that. It's super common. And I think there are a number of reasons why guys can maybe perform worse when the stakes rise. And one thing I found useful is creating competition in your training every day. Like our guys at the end of hitting, in 15 minutes, they always compete. And it's interesting to see certain people, their numbers and their performance increases when the stakes rise and when they add pressure and adrenaline, and others don't, right? And you want to figure that out in training, not on Friday game day, right? So we try, as a college coach especially, we're always creating competitions and we're doing things to try and figure out how do you deal with heart rate, like you mentioned, how do you deal with adrenaline taking over your body. And when you have a competition and your team's there and everyone's in the facility at driveline, everyone's watching, it's all displayed on the board, guys really start to get flustered and they start to get used to performing in that environment. I mean, one thing we did at my junior college it was called throw strike conditioning. It's hilarious, but all of our pitchers would throw one pitch and we had to run a mile for every ball. Right? So you'd see the guys that don't perform. They get up there and just fucking spike one 40 feet. Right? But then like our closer, who's just got that competitive advantage, he just gets up there every freaking week, punch a strike. And you can find out. And as a coach, like I always wanted to find that out in the fall. Like I don't want to find out that guy can't compete on game day, right? So adding it to the training, I think is really valuable. And then also like when it comes to hitting, I find a lot of hitters hit the panic button after a small sample size of a game or a series or whatever. And what I always encourage them to do is in a notebook or in their phone or whatever, to keep it very process oriented, much like Andy was speaking about earlier. And the questions I ask them is 1, did you get pitches to hit? 2, did you swing? And 3, were you on time? So if you say yes to all 3 of those questions and you're still missing the ball, then okay, maybe we'll talk mechanics. Otherwise, it's probably not your swing, right? So the vast majority of the time, I'll tell a guy, okay, you took an 0 for 4 today, let's go through your at-bats, and it's always, I got pitches to hit, I didn't swing. Or I got pitches to hit, I swung, but I was late. Or I didn't get anything to hit, and I hit a 1-0 change up, I rolled over to shortstop or whatever. And it's usually more based on pitch selection and how you control their at-bat, more so than the actual mechanics of the swing. And for whatever reason, that's the first thing guys want to fix when they have a bad game. And I know that as a young college coach, I made that mistake where a guy popped up, and I would pull him aside and say, here's a video, and you did this. And a lot of times it kind of just spiraled into a slump, where making it more process-based, based on pitch selection, because you know you put the work in, your swing is good. Just taking it more to like decision making in game is probably for the long haul best.
I mentioned something earlier, just about understanding numbers. I think extrapolating numbers and looking at, everything is perception, right? So if you create a chart, that's something I talked about at the shop, I think with the groups, for everybody else. I think your hitters having a chart or just seeing how many swings they have left during the season can be really, really powerful and really, really valuable. If you have a chart of, you're going to get 200 at-bats this season and you're getting 2 swings per at-bat, on average you have 400 boxes over here. What gives you the best season you've ever had? 15 jacks, 20 doubles, whatever. And as the season's going on, if you start out poorly, right, and you're 0 for your first 15, right, if you're in high school or college, you may hit panic mode. Right? But when you start looking at that chart, it's like, oh my God, I have, a home run, or I don't have anything, but look at all of the swings I have left. Like, let's relax, right? If you look at it a month into the season, you see, okay, well, I have 3 home runs, I have 5 doubles, I'm only hitting like 260, this isn't the greatest yet, but oh my God, I still have 250 swings left. It's only like, 17 swings, like individual swings that I need to have the best season that I've ever had that's marked right here, right? 200 swings, I only need 17 more. So charts like that I find to be really, really valuable. Those help guys.
John Lamprose, 2-5 Baseball. I got a kind of a 2-part question. It kind of goes back to culture a little bit. I've kind of been trying to take this approach of talking with my players instead of to my players or at my players. Kind of talk about, Hark, I think I've seen you post some stuff about hitters questioning some of the things that you're saying or that their coaches are saying. If you guys could each kind of go into kind of creating that culture where you have that dialogue where the players feel comfortable talking not back to you but back with you, and then kind of in a state where they go back to their high school or their college or whatever it is and they have that talk at you coach or talk to you coach, kind of having them feel comfortable and giving them some feedback to go to that coach and say, hey, what do you mean by this, and have them, kind of have the stones to do that.
that's a huge thing that Dov, Gene, and I all try and work on is make sure we're leaving a lot of questions to guys. We're trying to let them kind of take themselves answers instead of us just, tell what it is. Especially with a lot of, just in like high school and kind of middle school age athletes, when they come in, they expect to be told what to do. And it can be something as easy on like day one, they'll be hitting, oh, yes sir coach, I just start telling them just like ridiculous stuff, right? And they're like, eventually they're like facing the wrong way, like, looking at the catcher and they're like, okay, at what point did you think this was going to work? And they're like, well, you're a coach, when you have your own authority, no one here has a gun to your head telling you to swing exactly like this. At the end of the day, it's your swing. So just giving them some ownership, allowing, letting them know it's okay to ask questions. It's okay to tell you this doesn't feel right. You'll learn just as much by knowing what doesn't work for you as what does work for you. The analogy I always go back to is how do you find your favorite flavor of ice cream? Somebody didn't just stick like a bowl of vanilla ice cream. This is your favorite. No. Right? You tried some you liked, some you didn't, and you kind of narrow it down. So we always try and kind of funnel information to our athletes, so they're allowed to pick what they like, and then we have them explain it back to us and say, all right, if you get kids who want to appeal to the coach a lot, they try and talk to the coach in the same language the coach talks to them, which doesn't mean anything to me. Means they know how to talk to a coach, and that's great. Like, look, imagine I'm your friend. That's the person you hang out with, not on the baseball field. Some kids gotta talk what a friend is. Like talk about your swing like I'm a kid your age. See how they talk, see how they communicate, and that's been vital. And I'm sure Connor has some other input.
Okay, I don't have a ton more, but just learning to speak their language is so huge. Like they want to talk about Fortnite, with them. Like that creates a bond immediately to where you guys are speaking the same language and all that stuff. Like especially with the coaches too, you need to teach them basic communication skills, basic problem solving skills. They want to make the coach happy because they don't know how to talk to the coach. Like teach them how to talk different languages, and then ask them for feedback and let them talk to you in a different language. Make them describe things like that they've seen a video. Other than that, I think Parker kind of talked about basically.
That's definitely an area that over the last year and a half, 2 years, and still now, I've had to get a lot better at, because I was focused on getting results for the player and getting results now, and always felt like that was my job, as opposed to allowing them to fail a little bit more. And you could get results with the player, but at some point, it's like they stop listening and they get on auto-tune. And when they're on auto-tune, they're relying too much on you to provide the result for them. And then when they leave, and at some point they're going to leave and go off to school or go off in the season and you're not around, stuff turns around. Look at it, he's laughing right now because he knows exactly like 2 situations, especially one that I'm talking about right now. A kid that was in our program for years, and he hadn't played baseball in 2 years in high school because he had a debilitating arm issue, and he ended up coming in, we have the arm, worked on that. He's a physical kid. He's like 6'3", 195, runs a 6'6", 6'7", tremendous arm now from the outfield. He can really bang. And he went away to college, and he was a freshman All-American, but that was after he went into the fall. Turned into a total nightmare and a total mess. Did not manage himself well, came back in the wintertime, and we worked on some stuff, fixed some stuff up. He didn't even make the travel roster. That's how bad he was in the fall. And then a kid got sick, so he got on the travel roster. Then another kid got hurt, so he got to play. And that weekend, he went like 7 for 11 with 3 doubles, a triple, and a couple home runs. Then he goes on to have a freshman All-American season. Same stuff happens the next year. Guys, they get on auto-tune, and they just look for you to have the solutions for them. And we need to be more, parents, coaches, allow them to fail more and force them to find the answers. I find myself probably the last year, asking guys more when they say, how did that feel? How did that feel? What did that feel like? What do you think the problem was? And trying to get them to problem solve it, because guys are awful problem solvers right now. Just absolutely awful problem solvers.
I think two things that are really beneficial for that are, one, educating the athlete that we have one job, we're here for them. And as soon as we relay that and it's truly genuine, they notice that we have no problem being wrong about anything. I mean, and that's where I think the open dialogue takes place is, oh, coach isn't afraid to be wrong, so I can ask him about this, or hey, why are we doing this? So I think that's really important. And the second thing is technology. I think, technology such as blast motion and 4D motion and hit tracks, it allows us to, one, not focus so much on being right, but explain why things are happening. And once we can relay why something is happening, then that's an open dialogue with, wow, I never thought of it that way, or why are we doing this? Then we can, explain it through channels that way. But the best feeling is, meeting a guy, for the first time and him kind of mouthing to his buddy, hey, can I ask him that? And the guy's like, yeah, you can ask him that. Just because he's never been in that type of situation before. It's always been, yes, sir, I'll do that. But, that's really important, one, to relay why things are happening, and technology is a massive tool for us to be able to do that. And then, knowing that we're there for them ultimately. We don't care if we're right or wrong. That doesn't matter. It's just, did we get that kid? Did we help him, to progress as an athlete?
I have one thing. So part of that question, and correct me if I'm wrong, was also about like how does you help a player deal with, maybe a coach that they'll have to play for that they don't work with as much as, yourself or another coach, correct?
Right.
And I used to be in the camp about just, hit nukes and nod your head and say, huh, and that's an incomplete solution. Because again, if we tell a player like, hey, be open-minded, and that's kind of telling them, no, kind of shut that coach out. So it's just teaching them like, look, this coach is telling you this, even if you think it's wrong, they're telling this because they are trying to get you better, or they're trying to win games. Understand where they are coming from. And then put the task on them. Look, if the coach says something to you and you get upset by it, like that's a choice you made to get upset. The challenge then, look, if you have to deal with this coach for a week, like find one good thing a day, like that he mentions, to improve your swing. Because then it becomes, again, more of a fulfillment activity for them, more so than just, playing with spite for a coach that they're going to be around all the time. To just talk about process and learning the swing, but also the process of just learning in general. Help guide them to, you have nothing to lose by trying to find the good, and even in a situation you don't like.
Can I add something to that for him?
Yeah.
Have your kids write the practice plan once a week. Make them collaborate and write the practice plan. You'll see their value system. You'll see what they want to tell you. And then you in turn can establish a relationship. Did that a lot years ago.
Great.
I think briefly I'll say it is a delicate balance to be like humble and open-minded and all that stuff. At the same time, you have to be confident. Because I know that athletes, they come to us, they're like paying and they want advice, so they want you to never shoot. And at the same time, being open-minded and not driven by ego. So it is a tough balance because like when we get guys that are hanging on to their career, like they don't fly up to Seattle for a friend, right? They want someone that can help them. So trying to balance that is tricky, but I think being open, like I just wear them out with questions the first couple of days. It's kind of how I do it, and I learn a lot from them. So I think they'll learn right away that you're there, like you're trying to take knowledge from them, and then now we can like go to work. But yeah, being confident is important to find.
Well, we have to, we got to cut this section short here because we're running short on time, so we're going to go over to Dave's presentation.
You can cut mine short if you want.
Well, you're up. Let's go. Thanks, guys.
right, our next presenter, and our last presenter of the day, we've got Gabe Mayorga, and he is from the KHG Sports Agency, and he's going to talk about having the same goals for high school, college, pro, and everything in between. So without further ado, here's Gabe.
The room cleared out. You want me to wait? I think the room kind of cleared out. They heard that one in aging. The ages tend to talk.
You want to wait?
I don't care. I mean, if they want to hear me talk, you can say, hey, that agent's going to talk. All right. It's actually more intimidating with empty. Good. All right, guys. Yeah, my name is Gabe Mayorga. I'm from KHG Sports Management. Sorry, Eugene tried to get Boris and couldn't make it. You got me. Been doing this for 6 years now. Firm's out of North Carolina. I'm out of Phoenix, Arizona. I'm the director of baseball for the West Division. Truthfully, when Eugene messaged me and asked us to speak, I thought, what am I going to talk about with you guys about hitting? Being sure you can give an insight from the agent's perspective. And it's funny because I can remember 3 years ago being at Eugene's place and him talking about putting on an event like this. And I thought, that'd be awesome. Like, at that time, he was getting a lot of pushback from the things that he was teaching in the community. And I thought, that's what they need. They need to know what they don't know. And so I don't know how many coaches do we have here, like college, high school, show of hands. Okay, club coaches, and then is it pro personnel? Is that the rest? Pretty much. All right, so kudos to those college coaches, high school coaches, and club coaches that came, because I've been fighting to get people to come here just from Phoenix, and I can't get them to come. Which is sad for me because I think the game is changing. I think it's changing so fast right now, and if you're not out seeking information, you're getting left behind. So I'm scared Arizona's getting left behind a little bit in the amateur ranks. So tip of the hat to you guys that came out, because I know you're sacrificing time, money, time away from your family. So I think I was pretty excited to see this many people out here. Title of mine was same goals. He's like, well, what's the title? I thought same goals because I think that's what's getting lost right now in this shift in hitting, especially what I see within the ranks of, and I'm just as much to blame in this as being an agent with the players, is at the lower ranks, it
seems to be that agents, as myself, and specialized coaches are kind of the bad guys sometimes. At least that's how I feel, and that's what I hear. And I think it's because of a lack of communication with our high school coaches and our club coaches and our college coaches. Just like clear communication from our part. Because a lot of times these players are kind of going without them knowing, and then they find out, oh, he's hitting at 108, or he's doing this and he's doing that. And I think sometimes it's the guy's egos getting involved, but sometimes it's just them not knowing. Like, well, I need to know what he's teaching because when he comes here, we need to know how to handle it. And we forget right away, real fast, there's all these egos getting thrown away, and we forget, hey man, we all have the same goal here. And I think that's to win. I like when my player wins because he's usually playing better, and it's to get the most out of our player. And what I found is when I sit down with high school and college coaches, that's usually what they want. And then I go to a facility, and that's usually what they want, because whether we like to admit it or not, our brands are on the line too, right? I mean, the facility's brands on the line when their guys on the field, the school's brands on the line when their guys on the field. So I think the irony of some of that tension that's happening is we have the same goals, and somehow it's getting lost. So I wanted to hit that, and real quick for me, so you guys kind of are like, well, who's this Wazoo he has to come in and speak? Is I played some baseball, and I come from a baseball family as long as I played some minor league ball, and a set of 6 cousins that played as well. And one thing, I'm an agent, but I'm a player first. I remember those struggles, I remember those fears, I remember that anxiety, that heart rate. I remember feeling like I put everything in, and then it just didn't play out. And so here I am as an agent, which I do contracts and I talk with teams, but I'm also acting as a middleman. A guy that's connecting the college coach, sometimes the pro coaches, and the high school coaches, and trying to be the middleman with these players that are having these feelings of hitting coaches saying this, high school coaches saying this, and they don't like each other, and how do I handle this? How do I make this guy happy, but I want to work on this? And I haven't found the recipe or the secret sauce for that. I was hoping somebody would have it today. And I think this is kind of the first steps, is having an event like this. So hats off to 108, because I know they do a lot of work outside of this event, so to plug this in had to have been a big deal. So Eugene and their team, hats off, because I think the more information and the more we offer this, I think that tension is going to lower, and I think we're going to see our players play even better. When you ask for my perspective, I thought, well, this is only one agent's perspective, and where the game's going, where the hitting's going right now. For me, I think we're obviously at an analytical shift, and there's a lot of voices and data and things to consider. For my role on this process is not to be another voice, but to guide my player to the guys that can handle that data and that stuff. So like when Andy was saying, like, we need a team to really help support that. And that's where I reach out to guys like David or like Eugene or Dustin Lynn or Luke is another guy that I reach out to quite a bit. And I have some Cairo guys. And I think right now, more than anything, what Andy was saying is right on cue. Is we need to have some experts in a lot of different areas, and we need to get them somehow to intertwine. My role right now is I'm trying to figure out how to do that, and I'm trying to connect and network with as many people. And I think that's what the really good agents are doing. What I've noticed in being in this industry and being kind of green and young and wanting more information is we have old school agents as well that don't want to be a part of that. They just want to like grab guys and hope they figure it out and hope they have the right pieces in place. And I think that's the wrong way to go about it. I can remember chasing that dream, and I know there's some times where you need some pieces plugged in. Sorry. I did pretty good on touching that. So one of my big things that I've noticed, and we're kind of touching on it right now, and this is just my perception from what trainers and players are saying, is the biggest thing that I see with guys that are training with facilities like a 108 or next to or a drive line, is the guys that are getting that kind of training are having a better understanding of how to take care of themselves. I'm seeing usually lower risk of injury. I'm seeing usually a better idea how to get out of slumps, or at least they have people they can go to. And I think that goes with these coaches putting on an environment like you were talking about earlier. I feel like some of my stuff has been stolen, but they're putting on competitive environments that are allowing these players to go into the games and kind of be able to control their adrenaline. It's one thing I think that the players are sharing with me is what they're gaining out of this training and out of these facilities is the ability to be able to handle pressure and perform under pressure. And so I'm a huge fan of specialized coaches that have group settings that are having competing environments, because performing, whether it's high school, college, or especially the pro level, it can be highly competitive and a lot of pressure. So they're also learning how to take care of their body with mobility work and training and all the pre-game and post-game stuff, which what I find sometimes I run into a kid and they don't know how to do that, and I'm like, well, that's why you're always hurt. That's why your arm hurts every time. It feels like a truck ran it over. You've never really been taught on how to warm up. You've never really been taught on how to cool down afterwards. My perspective right now is, and it's one man's perspective, is this game is at its highest level ever, at every level. I get to go scout high school guys, junior college guys, D1, D2, NAI, pro guys, and it amazes me how good these athletes are. There was a time about 5 years ago where I was really nervous about baseball in America per se. I felt like we were kind of behind. I felt like our amateurs were falling behind because they weren't getting the tools and they weren't working out 8 hours, 9 hours, 10 hours a day like some of our foreign guys. But I feel like some of these facilities have now caught us back up because I'm going to amateur games and I'm seeing high school athletes with tools of AA players, like power arms, power bats. Now they're not finished yet, they're not polished, but the tools right now are just ridiculous. I'm sitting down with directors and scouts and we're like this kid's 16, this kid's 17. It's more common now than it's ever been. So what I feel is I feel kind of bad for some of the coaches that aren't reaching out to these facilities and coming out and giving this information, because I feel like they're still missing the boat in some of these amateur areas. So I encourage the club coaches and the college coaches that are here and the high school coaches, if you care a lot about the baseball community, which I assume most of you guys do, is get back home and share this stuff with guys, so they don't know what they don't know, right? That's what one of my coaches saw. Said, "We don't know what you don't know," and I was like, "Oh." And the first time I met Eugene, I thought I knew about hitting, and I was like, "Oh, I don't know what I don't know," and I had to remap what I thought. And I remember going and arguing with my family, who's a baseball family, and going, "You guys got it all wrong." And we had a lot of good discussions, so it's been fun kind of going on this new journey with these facilities and learning. So that's one of the things that I see with baseball right now, and I share with you guys a little insight with my pro guys. So it's fun to watch the transition from either high school or college to pro ball, because right now there's some organizations, Andy being one of them, we have a couple guys there. There's a lot of organizations right now that have really jumped on board and are doing a lot of the newer things with analytics. But it's funny to get the kids' response, like without prepping them or anything, just saying, how's it going over there? And what I found is, even the ones that he's hitting, I got a guy that's hitting like 200, right? And they've made some hitting changes with him, but they're using a blast and they're running all these data. And normally when he was in a different setting, he'd be pretty pissed. And he's been like the happiest guy ever. And I'm like, what are you so happy about? Hit 200, man. And I could talk to him like, we have a good relationship. And he's like, dude, but the stuff that we're working on, he's like, I know that it's gonna work because they're tracking stuff. And he's never done that before. And so what I've learned not just him, but a handful of my guys, and they're hungry for this information. They love it. They're like, I'll sacrifice some right now to get these gains. And so they're, he's like, dude, my launch angle is better, my exit velocity is better. I'm looking, and he's also tracking, pitch selection, this and that. He's like, I'm swinging at good pitches. I just need to improve my launch angle here. I'm barreling up balls. And so, what I kind of took away from that was like, these kids are starving for this information, and I think it starts at the lower levels. If we can get these guys, our players here, our amateur players, this information early, which is happening more and more, we're going to see better baseball players. And I think that's everybody's goal here, is to make better baseball players, to watch the game grow and progress. I know that is for me. I get a kick out of it. Like as much as I like my job, everyone does a job for money, and that's kind of the agency job for money. But for me, there's no better win than watching these kids get better and fulfill a dream, whether it's a D1 scholarship or get drafted. For me, it's a real win, and that's really why I became a part of this industry. So when I got invited to be a part of this, I knew I was in the right place, because he's already been a lot of good things said about Eugene, and everyone's got to know him, but this guy's enthusiasm and the team's put together is all about the guys. They're about the players. They're about getting the most out of them, and I truly believe that. And I've tried to get guys down here for the last 2 years. I don't think I've 6 years. Sorry, guys. So another thing I've been asking myself over and over again, and my contact is on the Twitter, and I like to hear from the community, because I found that sometimes when I'm trying to communicate with high schools and college coaches, I'm really missing the boat on being on the same page with them on this player development side. And I'm trying to find different ways to approach coaches who maybe might not be as open to outside training facilities to be a part of their development. I know that there's a lot of coaches right now that are a little bit standoffish. So what I'm hoping most to get out of this is to get the guys that are kind of on board and wanting to learn, not just wanting to learn for themselves, but figuring out how we can pull more of the baseball community to kind of bond this thing and make it as special as it can be. I'm hoping to hear from guys different ideas on how to communicate with these guys, or maybe how to have one of these functions kind of do a tour almost, where they're inviting guys in the lower communities to really grow this baseball, because the way I see it is our guys are kind of at a disadvantage in the U.S. if everybody's not sharing this knowledge to them, because they're going to school and they got all these other things. We got all the tools, we got all that, but we're not spending as much time as some of the other people in other countries training these young athletes. That's the reality. Is a lot of these younger athletes are training for 8-9 hours a day as professionals. So the biggest thing I see right now is now we have some of the tools and the technology and everything, but how do we get more guys on board at the lower ranks, at the high school ranks, at the junior college ranks? That's the biggest piece right now, in my perspective, is trying to get more guys involved in that, and trying to get club baseball teams on the same page as high school baseball teams, and trying to get college coaches on the same page as training facilities when it comes to rest. And you know what, we're going to take the summer off, and we're going to really dive into the swing and approach and things like that, and not see it as a bad thing. I'm not sure when development's become a bad thing, like when it's become a bad thing for a player to want to work extra on the swing, and not want to go play baseball somewhere. Like he's like, hey, I'm going to take the summer off, I want to train. That's one of the biggest pushbacks I get right now from colleges especially, They want to send him to a summer league, and the kid's like, well, I want to stay back, and I want to get stronger, and I want to get faster, and I want to work on my swing. And I'm like, sweet. But right away, he's getting labeled as selfish. And I'm like, what? He wants to get better so he can perform better for the team to win. That's the way I see it, you know, like, and I think it's because of maybe social media and Perfect Game, and I don't know, I don't want to blame Perfect Game, but I think it's because of just the way things are looked at with all these gradings and things, that they think the player wants to be a higher rank and whatnot. And I'm sure some of the pressures of getting scholarships and getting drafted is involved in that player, but I think ultimately, like, the player just wants to be the best player he can be. And so one of the things that those are the things that I'm really trying to work on is how do we get coaches to be able to talk with their players and say, hey, going into the summer, what are your goals? Do we want to go play, or do we want to stay back and develop? And how do we get those things to interact together and have facilities team up with universities so we make sure that's happening? You know, playing in the Cape and the Northwood League is great, it's awesome, but sometimes the guy needs to stay back and train. And so, those are kind of my insights and my little nuggets from an agent standpoint. I'm trying to bridge the gap and kind of tie up those loose ends. Those are the biggest pieces I feel need to be filled. At the pro level, it's a little different. So for some of the pro guys, you guys obviously know how it works, but a lot of the pros, once they become pros, are doing things on their own, and we're able to implement special coaches and things like that outside the instructs. So it's a little easier, but we're really wrestling with it at the lower ranks, and I think it's kind of hampering some guys. So, yeah, man, that's what I got on my perspective and on an agent's perspective, one agent's perspective, on where the game of hitting's going, what these facilities are doing, and what the kids are talking about, and some of the conversations they're having. So.
Well said. And I think the biggest thing is education. I think, look, I mentioned it yesterday, in every other profession, and this is a profession like any other, you have educational resources that are available so you can grow and learn and be better at your job. You know, as a coach, as I was trying to, develop and get better, I reached out to a lot of people. Some people answer emails or answer phone calls, and other people don't. I reached out to Dustin Lind, I feel like first time like 3 years ago, Jerry Brewer, Ryan Parker, just trying to connect with guys that I felt like were doing a really good job at what they were doing, and I wanted to know more and learn more and dig in more. And when those people answer those emails and you build that network and you talk with people more and more, try new things, that's a big part of it. Rather than coveting information at every level, whether it be professional, collegiate, high school, talking about things openly. We're going to go, I think what the saying is, you want to go, you want to go fast, go alone, you want to go far, you go together. I think we go faster and we go farther if baseball goes together. And I think the influencers are in this room right now. Like, look, we had more representatives from college and pro ball than we did high school. I think that people need to start understanding that if we want to continue to grow the game, we need to educate people, and we need more resources of information. And all the people that are influencers in the game, you have to share that information. You have to share the education. So everybody else wants to continue to learn and grow too. Like when you guys go back to Utah and you go back to Vegas and go back to wherever you came down from. We had a high school coach come down from Washington. But when you go back up and you got to have an experience like this and learn from all the brilliant guys like Andy and all the other guys that were here today, you share those experiences and you use them with your players. And the more it gets talked about, the more other people want to jump on board. I mean, look, when computers were introduced into the workforce, people didn't want it. They didn't want it. Now, people have to use it. Nobody has a choice, and everybody loves it. It's the same kind of thing. People just need to figure out what their favorite flavor of ice cream is and go from there. So for everybody that was here for just the one day, thanks so much for coming out. For everybody that's going to be here tomorrow, it's going to be another great day. Today was awesome. Looking forward to it. For everybody that's going to the dinner tonight, can't wait to see you there. So we'll see you tonight. Thanks for coming.